Yeah. I don't know where mine are.
And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? And welcome back to the Kanto Conversations. My name is Rob, over at Red or Blue. Here with me, I have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Connor from Rock Pokemon. Con, say what's up.
What's up, y'all? Good to see you, chat. James, Swami, Basic Trainer, all y'all, Obi. Good to see y'all. First episode of 2022 for the Kanto Conversations podcast, and we're starting off with a bang.
Yeah, and as you guys can see, we have a very special guest. Needs no introduction, but we're going to do it anyways. Mr. Jake over at Pokenomics.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. It should be fun. Just hang out and talk some Pokemon.
Yeah, man, nothing better. So I'm sure everyone in the chat already knows who you are, Jake. But maybe quick rundown about who you are, and anything you want to let the chat know before we get kicked off.
Gosh, yeah, nothing. I mean, I I run a channel called Pokenomics. We've been doing that for a while. I think about a year and a half, a little bit over a year and a half. And yeah, just a big Pokemon collector. The channel's definitely focused on talking about the speculating, investing, money side, in terms of how to build a collection you want and in the most financially prudent way possible. Those types of videos and conversations. But it's filled with people who really love the hobby, very engaged in the hobby, and love to just debate and have conversations about what the market's going to do, what's it going to do in the future, and all in the process of, I think, most people watching and hanging out, just building their own collections behind the scenes.
Yeah, I know I can speak for Rob and myself when we say we've both been in those chats, watched those videos for a long, long time, whether it's on our channels now or on our personal channels before that. At least for me, getting kicked off kind of later in the game on YouTube. But we both really appreciate, the content that you bring and the folks you bring together. It's always a really fun conversation. So stoked to finally connect on the podcast and get to chop it up a little bit about Pokemon. So, and I know we've got some guys and gals in the chat who are regulars on your chat and on some of mine, some of Rob's. So
Jake, I remember I think your first video was top 5 mistakes or something like that people are making. And I remember when you were making a lot of content, you'd hold up a picture and you'd be like, should I invest in Japanese? Should I invest in this or that? Those videos really grabbed me. I really liked the way that you were kind of approaching the market. I think you were talking about things that just weren't being talked about at the time, and I think a lot of people really gravitated towards you, and just your very easygoing persona. You're not hype driven. You're not here to make all this money. You're just an average collector with some experience and, some love for data in the hobby, and just sharing that with people. And that's authentic, man. And I think people really appreciate that. I know that I do. It's kind of cool to see your journey of where you started and then kind of how you are now. Can you give us a little bit of background and just kind of how you started to gravitate more towards the lives and just more conversations with people as compared to kind of where you started with Rafi?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I made about 100 videos or so almost before I even did a bunch of lives. And I just sort of said everything I think that I wanted to say that felt that type of format. I actually shot a video tonight that was a reaction video. I was watching someone else's video and just literally stopping it and then reacting and talking about it. I may never release that. I may never go into that. I have mixed feelings about being too harsh or using other people's content for my own content, that type of thing. But that's why I really wanted to bring people on, because I like discussions more. It's more fun for me, and I think it's better for the audience. Although I do think the majority of people on YouTube probably are not looking for that and are looking more for short, what should I do, informational type videos and or pack openings. The content that I like the most and absorb the most is this type of thing, like what we're doing right now, which is just more hanging out. I love the live chat. I love that people can just hang out, comment. They can have their own conversations. It's part of what I like about it is there's lots of good back and forths and conversations going. It's why I started like my Patreon, which was just this, but it's like on a Zoom, so everyone can see each other's faces. Everyone could turn on their cameras and have like an actual discussion. My always hope
that's cool.
my always hope is that it would grow into and be more and more, in some sense, me using like my therapy skills, my group leading skills to manage conversations and lead conversations, rather than just talking straight to camera and like instructing or teaching. I think that I sort of did that in the beginning, and it's not something I don't ever want to repeat videos if possible. Obviously we repeat what we say a lot, but I don't want to like remake an exact video or something, just because like the majority of people have never seen it because it's buried a year and a half ago, and that's just how YouTube works and the algorithm works for most. But so I guess that's how
do you think like that's what keeps you coming back and making content? Like the fact that you've like shifted it to those, like, do you think you would have stopped if you hadn't shifted to like more conversational or lives or things like that? Like, do you think you just would have been like, well, if I've said all I said and kind of stopped? Like, do you think that's part of what keeps you coming back, like the community, or what like drives you to keep making videos and content?
It's important for me to do it for myself to some extent, in the sense that I want to make a certain amount of money doing it. I want to have a certain amount of fun doing it, that I'm actually like enjoying it. And I want it to have a like actual usefulness and value to people and be good for the broader community. So it's like all of those things I'm trying to balance all of that out. So I think a good business basically strikes the balance of all of those things, where it doesn't burn you out. You really like what you're doing. You're making decent money or supporting yourself for the amount of effort or time, so you don't become resentful of it or feel like I have to do this and I'm getting nothing out of it in that way. And it's good for other people. I think people, generally speaking, who have watched and engaged in my channel long term, it's helped them enjoy the hobby more. It's helped them make better decisions. It's helped them think critically about things. They're probably happier with their collection than they would have been. They're happier, being here. And also it's connected a lot of people. A lot of people have become friends, have started their channels because they watch my channel, and been inspired by that. Just like I was inspired by and started my channels and my, community from other people who started their businesses, like Scott Pratt or, Gem and Pokemon TCA Gaming, started channels. And so, so that's the type of stuff I think about. And it's just, how do you make that sustainable long-term so that, it's good and enjoyable for everyone and a positive for everyone.
Yeah, I can say like that. I mean, that was the effect on me, right? Like a part of why I started a YouTube channel was watching guys like you, watching guys like Rob, guys who were doing it differently, who were bringing something different to the table. And I felt like I could like add some value as well to the hobby, right? Like I basically, like for me, it was like, well, I was writing a finance blog for millennials. Now I can use those, use this platform to convey financial literacy through the lens of collectibles, right? A lot of the same things, you do, right? It's kind of like we have the opportunity to use the hobby as a platform to like have really cool conversations with people, but also like convey like really important ideas, right? So I totally get that. And that was the effect on me for sure.
Yeah, a big part of, I think, for people who are really very engaged in the channel is sort of the underlying how to be a value investor, or how do value investors think about markets? How do they think about making sort of any investment or purchase in their life? How do they think about finances in general? And that to me is something that is in value, in my opinion, is the way to go about investing in anything. And yeah, hopefully, and I think is a good, I think YouTube is filled with hype generally. So, I mean, there are plenty of value investor channels and different sorts of things, but there's also a lot of hype. So, and I'm not talking Pokemon specifically. I just mean in general. I think the space and a lot of the biggest, loudest things, Yeah. So I think anyone, small or large, who comes with a channel that is helpful to people and helps them think practically and reasonably and patiently and preaches those sorts of things instead of like, gotta get everything right away and buy and it can't possibly lose. And, just, I think it's a good thing, particularly for a medium and a platform where I'm probably one of the older people or towards the older people in the hobby. You know, maybe we all are here, and there's going to be lots and lots of people. I think about doing this for 10 years, or, you know, 15 years or whatever, really making it sustainable. And you're going to have people of all different ages, and you can really have a positive impact on people's lives over time.
Yeah,
definitely, man. I remember, I can't remember when exactly it was. I remember you mentioning, it was either during a live or a video, you were talking about how you think that Pokemon has potential to really go up in price, you know, over time. Like really some of these, you know, first edition, you know, even like WotC cards that are very low pop have like really high potential. I guess like what I'm going with this is like, what do you have a lot of those cards crossed off that you've kind of like want or believe in, or are you still like chasing anything? Like, do you have like any collection goals that you're kind of still hunting, or are you like SM Pratt where you've kind of crossed off a majority of what you want? No.
No. I'm not in that situation. I also like doubles of things, and but even single copies of lots of things that I would like to have, I don't have. I don't even have everything completed ungraded that I want in binders, let alone do I have everything graded in the grades that I would like. And then when we talk about trophy cards, I'm missing almost all of them.
Yeah.
Aren't
we all?
That I would like. Yeah, exactly. So, and for me, there isn't a rush. It's about enjoying the process, enjoying yourself. I think if you're burned out on Pokemon or burned out on, you know, one good thing is to go to a different area, learn about a different thing. There's a lot of things. And then other things that I collect a wide variety of TCGs, CCGs, and non-sports cards, and even some sports cards. And then you can also collect toys and merchandise and memorabilia. And
yeah,
there's so many things that can be enjoyable and also potentially investable or retain good value over time. So I think it's really important, and sometimes gets conflated, this sort of like, am I a collector or investor? Or
right.
It was actually what my video might be about that I might publish, I might not, but responding to Twice Baked Jake's video on it, that I do think that there's a little bit, some of the negativity comes from like, I just want to like enjoy myself. I don't want to think about money. And it's like, well, you can do both. They don't have to let's be miserable.
That's my tagline is like, collect what you love, but do it intelligently. Right. It's the same idea, right? Like we, you know, Rob and I and other guys in the hobby talk about it a lot, right? Like you want to make prudent financial decisions with your collecting to make, because you know, most people don't have an infinite amount of dollars, right? You have a finite budget, hopefully, to spend on something like Pokemon, and to make that go further. And to your point, like playing the long game on it and being patient. And I think that's like really hard in today's society, because everything is hype driven. Everything is want it now. Everything is like, you know, instant gratification. And like a loss of critical thinking occurs like in that scenario. And I think the more that we can put out some like good rationale into the world, even if it's like biased by our opinions, it helps people like continue to think critically about the decisions they're making without like directly telling them what to do or what to buy, or like collect whatever you want, but you know, try to do it in a way that's like going to help you stay in the hobby for the long run instead of just burning out very quickly.
I think one of the pitfalls that I fall into is like being on Instagram or something like that, and like seeing people post stuff, you know, and like, oh, I got this new card, I crossed this off, and I'm like, man, I want to cross off my collection goals too, and I want to get this next card, and I can feel myself literally like the walls are caving in, like I'm not doing enough, like I should be putting more time and energy into Pokemon to making more money. I should be grinding, making more videos to gain more followers and subscribers so I can make more money. Like I almost feel this pressure sometimes just going on Instagram, and like as a tool that I use to, that I've met so many cool people. Like literally just today I had a few conversations with guys I've never talked to before, you know, because of this podcast. And it's just like so cool, like how many true friends, like like me and Khan talk all the time, you know, and we've never met in real life. And that's just so cool. And so to take this platform where I can like socialize with guys that I don't get to see in my area, and it being turned into a negative thing where I'm feeling like, you know, pressure to post something cool so I can feel a part of and like part of the in crowd. I feel like that's a pitfall that I can fall into sometimes. Do you guys ever get that way, or is it just me?
I think that there's no there's no answer or solution to these types of things in life.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, what you're talking about is ambition and being goal oriented and wanting to achieve things in life versus wanting to be like present and satisfied and appreciative of what you have and enjoying what you have. And I think that that is the human condition in a lot of ways, in whatever it is in your life, whether that's relationships, career,
Right.
Pokemon collection. That's going to be that's going to be there. And I think one thing that can be helpful more than trying to figure out there's one right way for me, or even there's one right way everyone should be, it's more like you actually have a little bit of control over that. And if you feel like if you feel like you're out of control in the sense that it's like, wow, I feel like I just can't help myself, I'm addicted to looking on Instagram, and then I just feel bad. You know, working on some self-discipline there can be good. You know, but it's sort of like another person, they might be going on Instagram and it might be very motivating and
Right.
fun to see that, and it helps them and it encourages them. So I think part of it is sort of, it's that personal responsibility piece of trying to figure out what's working for me, what's not, you know, kind of doing that analysis. And then of course, with everything in life, you can do too much analysis, and then you can, you know, that's
right.
That's just human nature. So and then just being impulsive and having more fun can be good. So yeah, but I think it's definitely a relatable thing. And it sounds like you figured out how to combat that part of it's hanging out with people, enjoying each other's company, you know, not just being focused on like, I need this card to feel happy in this hobby. There are other ways that I can feel really happy here.
Yeah. Well, that's why I love, like, I really enjoy like having these rational kind of emotionally balanced conversations that I get to hear from, like, you know, I'm a part of SM Pratt's Patreon. And so I really just I love to hear his experience. You know, hearing Rudy talk, you know, hearing you talk, Connor talk, catch them all. I enjoy these conversations, you know, because it, you know, obviously like I just go through like these peaks and valleys of like, you know, wanting to feel exactly what you're talking about, like wanting to feel a part of, wanting to be liked, but also being motivated, but also, yeah, I've gone on Instagram and just like felt like total, you know, not good afterwards, like for whatever reason, you know? And so it's kind of nice to have like these like balanced people that you can kind of go and watch and kind of bring you back down to what you need to do. So I think that's a big reason why I continue to come back to, you know, kind of people like you and Khan, you know, who have these type of channels where you guys are just talking, not just about Pokemon, but like how you think about Pokemon, how you think about spending your money, why are you spending your money, stuff like that. You know, I think it's super helpful.
I think one important lesson that I've learned, to go back to sort of, and maybe reiterate this point, is that often we have more control over ourselves than we realize. And so, you know, really repeating that and going back to this idea of, if you want to be, if you are unhappy with how you are engaging in this hobby, or you want to tweak it, great, you know, work on it. You don't have to you don't have to be a slave. You know, if you want more drama, go watch some drama channels and have some fun and enjoy it. You know, I think there's also a lot of the gatekeeping says a lot more about the person doing the gatekeeping that's going on, because the drama channels can be fun. Some of the trolling can be funny and enjoyable. It can also be like toxic and unfair and spread a lot of negativity. And so I think it's more about the person doing it, the people watching it. It's complicated. And so I think it's why personal responsibility is so important, because it's like each one of us, it's like, are you engaging in that drama, in that negativity in a fun, you know, way, or are you going out and like sending death threats to people and, you know, and wishing ill on people, and, you know, and it's just a good, the more that each of us takes personal responsibility in that, the more fun the hobby is going to be. And then talking about the market, Pokemon will be a more fun place to collect and be if a large percentage of the collectors are like really mature, kind, generous people.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of
like this. People view discipline as like this very like painful, arduous thing, but really it's like very freeing, right? Because you're able to have a distinct control like over yourself, because really at the end of the day, life is what it is. The only thing you really have control over is your own actions. But if everyone, to your point, exhibited more of that in the day to day, we'd have we'd have an amazing society, but a very, very healthy hobby, right? Where not everything is rainbows and butterflies, but it's much more constructive. It's much more, personally uplifting to each other. So I think that yes, if people could learn, but it's hard, right? People don't like things that they perceive as being difficult. People like the easy way because the easy path is you don't even have to think about it. It just is. I just type this thing or say this thing or hide behind the internet, and it's just very easy for me to, produce from a space of negativity, right? Is like the easy fallback for anyone, myself included. And that, combating that takes a little bit of discipline and mental fortitude and making that choice kind of daily. So.
And I think there's a lot more tolerance of what other people want to do from that type of space. Like if you feel like you're doing things the way that you would like to do them, you tend to be more tolerant of other people making different choices or wanting this hobby to be something different. And that's something that we've had a lot of growing pains this year of everyone should collect this way or shouldn't collect this way, or these types of people should be in the hobby. These type of people shouldn't be in the hobby. This is okay. This isn't okay. But it's all like, I'm very optimistic. Like, not only is this very predictable, it's also like we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like all these things are fine and normal. And I think the hobby is in a really good place overall.
Yeah. The hobby has grown exponentially, both, obviously market wise, but also, participant wise. Obviously during a time that has been a very acute, wildly different scenario than anyone has ever experienced. And a lot of people have had to operate out of a space of negativity or fear or whatever it is. And like that bleeds into people's workplaces, people's family relationships, their hobbies, our social media culture, whatever. But I think like the hobby is so strong that as we move out of this last, year and a half to 2 years of what we've been going through, as people's mindsets shift and as things get better and people's personal situations get better and their stress levels start to move down a little bit, we get to a place where like that plays out in the hobby as well, right? Where people are better to each other. And like I saw it this weekend going to Leonhardt's event, like there was not a single like negative like incident or like, how like you go to conventions or whatever, and there's always like one idiot who does something bad and it's got friggin' security on him or like, it was like, it gave me a lot more hope than I have historically had for like people seeing how well people interacted with each other at that event. And that makes me like super excited for the next 10 to 20 years, at least, of the hobby, seeing, both like our collective generation and, the kids of our generation who are participating in the hobby and how much like goodness there was in that. It was really cool to see. So it's exciting. It gives me a lot of hope for where the hobby's going.
So Jake, I'm kind of curious, man. What are you seeing just kind of like in the market in regards to kind of people that are constantly kind of talking to you about, what are some common questions that you get, some common themes, maybe some trends that you're kind of seeing kind of as of right now, over on your channel?
I think it's sort of a lot of conversation about, okay, is the market moving back up right now a little bit? Is it more just stabilizing? Is it stabilizing a little and then some things are going to fall even more? And, all of that is reasonable and possible. All of those scenarios. I think what is happening right now or this past month has been overall a stabilizing and a slight uptick on more things that have gone down a little bit more. But there are other things that have gone down a little bit, slightly more this month. But that's where we're overall versus 2 months ago, everything was still kind of trending down, or a lot of things were still trending down. That's not what we're seeing now. But what's going to happen next, I'm not sure. In terms of like people's comments and what people say, I think most sellers I know have good volume and there's pretty good demand, it's pretty good activity. Certainly not near where it was 6 months ago. But out of like the last 3 months, this pretty good activity. This month has been pretty good. And I think most sellers I know are pretty happy right now. They seem encouraged by the fact that there's still really good demand, that people still want these things, and they're adapting to the fact that they can't double their money or triple their money immediately on things, and that it's more, the margins aren't quite as huge, but requires a little bit more effort and work and time and patience and knowledge, but there's still plenty of room to have whatever type of business you want to have. And I think it's good. I think it bodes well that I'm very much of the mind that that there's a ton of demand, love for this. So many more people have seen it this year than before, and the hobby is much bigger and stronger. And I think we're at a place that's going to overall attract more and more people over time. I think there'll be more people in the hobby a year from now. There'll be more in 2 years, there'll be more in 3 years and 4 years. Now, could it go the other way? Absolutely. I can't predict the future. It's just if I had to guess, because I really like it, and I guess I just assume other people really like it too, and aren't just here for what I don't know why else someone would be doing all of this if it wasn't a really fun hobby that they wanted to keep doing. So, yeah, I guess that's my overall take on things. I think most people agree with me. I have some people like in my Patreon conversation who were a little bit more worried maybe, or point, had some data points where it's like, well, this item, fell another 20% or something last month. And my response is don't overreact to any one sale, because one sale could go down 20%. The next one could be up 40%. And that's the nature of auctions and
totally.
And all these types of things. And it's better to kind of take a broad picture of everything, and then also to see how it kind of goes over time. But overall, I think people mostly feel the same way, and just a lot of asking about like what's next, and is now the right time to buy? Should I hold a little bit more and buy? And when I hear a lot of that, that's a good sign. That means that people want to buy. They're just sort of waiting for the right time. That could just be the people I'm around, but I think that's probably where we're at.
Do you find that like the hardest thing to like obviously I know you're not just going to outright answer someone on what to buy or when to buy, obviously, right? But when
Charizard, it's always Charizard. Just buy Charizard
right now.
Yeah. Just kidding, guys.
How like people, like we have no idea what like folks' perceived time horizon is on buying something. Like, are they speculating as a flip? Are they buying it for long term in their collection and they just don't want to get, hosed? Do they not care at all and they just want to know, hey, like, are there not many more of these coming out into the population? If it's a graded card or whatever, or not much sealed that moves around into different hands. So, I guess like what I would ask is like for the average person who's asking you those questions, do you really think that like where the hobby sits today, Pokemon is and this is a loaded question, but an investable thing or hobby or market for those people? And you can, you feel free to kind of define investable however you think, like, or do you think it's more like you kind of have to be a collector with a business. Like if you're just the average person, like business meaning churning cards to fund your collection, or like can the average person really, you know, invest over short, medium, and long-term time horizons in this hobby?
I think that if, again, not financial advisor here, just my opinion, I think that it's better bet to invest your money in the stock market and see the same types of returns we've seen in the stock market over the last 50 years. Now we've had a crazy 10 year bull, run up, and the stock market could go down 40, 50, 60% at any time, including some of those safer havens in the stock market.
That'd be great.
But I think over the next 7 to 10 years, I think there's more of a chance of the stock market repeating than the Pokemon market repeating in any sort of way. And that could mean the Pokemon market could disappear largely and become uninteresting to people. The Pokemon market could boom even more. It could be somewhere in the middle, probably likely somewhere in the middle, maybe slightly positive, maybe slightly negative. I don't really know. I think because of the demographics of Pokemon, that we're young, more and more people are going to come in. This is one of the first times it's been out in the public. Pokemon, I think, will likely probably try to appeal more to adults in the future and multi-generations with their content, not just their cards, but their video games and their movies and all sorts of things. I think all of those point to an optimistic Pokemon future. But if I were to, if we say something is investable, is it, it's sure. I mean, it depends on how we define that. It's like, is it the best possible, safest investment that I think will probably get you the best return? No, I mean, I'm definitely more bearish than someone like Rudy from Alpha Investments or others and other channels and other people when they say things like, they basically imply that you'd have to be an idiot not to put $250,000 in Chilling Reign right now. In my view, when I watch some of these videos, it does feel like there's an implication of like, well, they've always gone up. Of course they'll go up. And there's sort of that feeling and that reality. And what we don't know is how many people are keeping it sealed, how many people are doing that. And we don't know how these generations are going to be viewed or appreciated or looked at in a few years. And I'm buying booster boxes of cards from the 90s, in sports, in key sports, $10, right? You can buy some things for $10. Now, again, it's very different because the Pokemon company is the only one printing it. It's not a million different random card companies with all, and they're not overprinting them the same way. But everyone wants security, and it feels good when Rudy or anyone tells you, you will make money. Just do what I'm going to do and you will make money. And I think that is bad advice. I think that if you can't handle the fact that just because something happened in the past, it isn't going to happen in the future, then I would just put your money in something that has a much longer track record and something like an index fund where you're going to own a large basket of stocks. That's my personal opinion. But that doesn't mean that it's not investable and that you can't make money or even if I think if you do buy these things, I think you are likely, if you're smart about it and get it at good prices, you will probably make money in the future. Will probably go up. That's my full rambled answer, but
that's a really good answer. I like that. As a former financial advisor who just left the industry, obviously there are a myriad of red flags in this hobby when people view it as investing, right? Whether it's that people somehow perceive that stocks are more risky than shiny cardboard. Other things that concern me are, historically collectibles that have endured, right, have largely been stores of value, right, kept up with inflation over long-term time periods. And when you look at the pull forward of returns that we had over a very compressed time dilation, right? So basically the fact that what we're sitting at, like the average vintage item is probably like 5x what it was 2 years ago ish. That's a lot of return profile in percentage terms over a very short period of time, right? So basically the way I perceive it is that on a lot of the average, like more common items in the hobby, we've pulled forward so many of those future returns to now that it's going to be very hard for people to even if they get, a quote unquote under market or good deal or whatever, entry point's everything, right? But it's going to be really hard if you're holding it over the long term to even have that item be a store of value, just based on how much they've moved in price over such a short amount of time, despite the fact that there's increased demand, because we also have an unknown supply and we just have a definitive amount of return that's been so compressed. So that's what I worry about, is that when people are truly buying things, not like, hey, I want to buy it for $20 and sell it for 40, and next week, like, great. Like that's speccing, right? That's different in my mind. But like from a long-term perspective, I worry about a lot of the like more common stuff in the hobby, right? Like for me, I wouldn't, how do I put this? Unless I knew that my financial, like similar to yours, Jake, and I don't know Rob's as well, but from what you've talked about, like the fact that the majority of our assets are in traditional investment vehicles, and then I have these carve outs in whether it's real estate or whether it's digital assets or collectibles or what have you, like that are very small percent, at least for me, smaller percentages of my net worth compared to long-term traditional assets growing and compounding, and whether it's generating dividends or simply just growing in the stock market, principal growth. I wouldn't be able to play as much in the hobby if my personal financial situation wasn't as secure. And the thing that gets me the most is when people like hit me up on Tuesday to buy a card and they're like, I gotta wait till Friday when I get paid. Like that makes me want to like convulse inside, because to me it says that they're not even at the basic 101s of like financial literacy and personal financial planning. And that kills me. Like that's why I still make content, because I want at least like one person to hear something I'm saying to mitigate that. So that's what worries me the most about like the investment view on the hobby, because I think some of the items that have the most potential are the ones that are unobtainable to the average person as well. And that's just my view. Kind of generally speaking, there's always going to be caveats to that, but I'm curious, like a little more on your take around like that, like the average kind of accessible items to people are people making a very big mistake if in their mind they think that they're going to be able to, on a real, inflation adjusted basis, make significant amounts of money on these items over the longer term, or pass them down to their kids or what have you.
Yeah. Well, okay. Before I answer, so I guess two things. So sure, in terms of like the lower end or more affordable items, or let's say any item under $100 or something like that. I think on a percentage basis, if Pokemon does well, there's a lot of really good items that I think could 5 to 10x under $100 right now at some point in the future. I don't think it's a guarantee. I don't think it's just a matter of like when, what are the high end items going to have done if that growth happens on the lower items? The high end items might not grow as much as some of the lower end items. It is possible. So I'm not going to sit here and say, well, if the baby shinies go from $1 to $5, that means the Pikachu Illustrator has gone from 350K, to 1.3 million. In fact, I think it's much easier for those baby shinies to go from $1 to $5 potentially. Now, if the Pokemon hobby shrinks and people become uninterested, it's the Pikachu Illustrator that could still keep going up in value. Whereas the baby shinies will very, very likely not. And most of the lower end and middle end stuff will not, because there's going to be plenty forever, basically, for the amount of people interested. Whereas there will never be enough of some of those high end stuff. And there might just be enough very, very wealthy people, that they're all competing over that stuff. And then what will happen is the feelings will change. So that there's going to be a humongous stuff in the hobby that people look at as worthless, and there are going to be a few items that everyone's chasing. That's one possibility. Another possibility is that Illustrator doesn't go up that much over time. It remains pretty flat. And then you see the baby shinies go to $10 each, which would be a 10 times return, on them. So anyone who's like, this is what's going to happen, or this is what's going to happen, I can see different scenarios for each one. I think it's more about understanding what type of market do the higher supply, maybe higher demand, and if not higher demand, the more affordable and thus higher demand, if that makes sense to people. So obviously, like, all of us here probably want the Pikachu Illustrator more than we want a baby shiny. So there might be more demand for that, but not at, not at $350,000 or whatever. So
things with higher velocity, right? Things that change hands more often because there's so much demand. Then there's the third scenario, right, where the Pikachu Illustrator is from today's starting point, entry point today, is a store of value for the next 50 years, and the rest of the hobby does nothing, right? Like the low end stuff does nothing, and that's 100%. The way you described it is I think super important for people to hear, and a really good perspective.
And I truly believe that we are early enough that a lot of the better cards from these generations, and if you can get them for those really low values, you will see growth on them. That's just my personal opinion. I don't think we're very late in Pokemon. I think like we're going to have a number of really popular periods and things coming up and stuff like that, so that's my personal opinion. Again, don't know how long it will last. Could be a fad,
well, that would be the healthiest thing for the market, right? It would be, and I kind of like cringe at like when I talk about the Pokemon hobby and the stock market in the same breath, despite the fact that it's a framework, right? But it's effectively a undulating market, but with a upward trajectory over time, right? Like that's kind of what you want, like a little bit of volatility, up and down periods, not just these, massive spikes, massive falls, or like very slow growth, then massive spikes and massive fall. Like it's like rolling volatility, right? It's the same way that like over many years, like whether it was gold from the 70s to now, or Bitcoin from the mid 2000 teens to now, that the ups and downs become a little more narrow, right? For people out there that don't, dig the finance terminology, that things move in a narrower channel over time. I guess that would be the best thing for the hobby. How that happens, a lot of ways, right?
And I personally, I don't have any issue with the stock market terminology and using that for Pokemon, because I think it applies. I think it is a Pokemon market, but we have to do it in a way where we're really describing what it is and what's happening here, and that the supply and the demand of something like Pokemon and a card is very different than a stock that you buy from a company. Okay. And every stock can be very different because there is a company behind it that has a business plan, a business model, earnings, future, potential, various levels of competitive advantage versus other sorts of things. And now we can talk about Pokemon as having a competitive advantage versus Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic, or certain cards having competitive advantages versus other things. And we can use a lot of the same terminology. And I think it does apply. But there is obviously a fundamental difference between cardboard and the demand side of, like, where does the demand come from in pop culture collectibles? It comes from, there needs to be a robust, vibrant community where people are collecting and enjoying things together, and ideally people need to have their own strong emotional connection and reaction to the cards. And if those things aren't there, it's not food and water. It's like food and water doesn't care about your feelings about food and water. Like you need to buy food and water.
Yeah.
Whereas Pokemon cards are driven by feelings. And if our feelings change, you don't need them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the way to describe it is like, there are far more, you kind of used the word earlier, but in a different way, fundamentals with an equity, right? With a stock, right? There's many metrics fundamentally to assess a company, for example. But with collectibles, it's a very narrow subset of fundamentals, mostly focused on rarity, different types of rarity, then tied to, that emotional factor, which is really what I would call like the technical aspects of the market, right? Which is similar to technical aspects, I guess, of an equity, right? Where the analysis of how a market moves is the same. It doesn't matter if it's corn or a stock or Pokemon cards. Like, it's just numbers, right? It's just statistics, right? But the actual fundamental underlying factors, there's so much narrower, and and I think that's what makes like collectibles more risky, in like way more risky, in my opinion, because it produces the ability for severe volatility, right? And like severe downside risk.
Yeah. So I think that there are stocks and companies that are far worse and far more risky than buying Pokemon cards right now.
You know what I mean? So right now, it could always can be, right? They're always, right.
So, but where I agree with you, though, and where I think is important, I think some of this comes from, is that cringiness around people who clearly know nothing about the stock market, talking about how Pokemon is better than stocks and not really giving any sort of like analysis of why you're going to make more money holding this Pokemon card, and then just saying things like inflation. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? And what is that? What are the specifics? And why is this company going to do better, versus this? And that tends to be the more youthful audiences, I think. But
because it's different, right? There's been a fallout of people being attracted to traditional investment vehicles. It's like, it's a very strange world, because despite the fact that they continue to prove over many, many, many years that they produce returns that are not necessarily, I want to call consistent, but moving in that same way we talked about, right? They undulate, but they move in an upward trajectory, broad-based. But it's all about making money now as quick as you possibly can, right? Like overnight, I want to 5x my money. How do I do that? And it's like, and I'm a big proponent of, like, I actually think to truly become wealthy, and I think you will resonate with this, you have to take calculated, concentrated bets, right? Like value investing or probably better said, being diversified is a great way to, compound some wealth over time and stay wealthy. But concentrated bets are how people get uber wealthy, right? So I get what people are trying to do. It's just it's really worrisome for me when people are eating the information that people are telling them, that it's much more, it's less risky for them to buy, to your point, 250K at Chill and Rain than 250K of the, global stock market, and let it ride for 20 years.
And it's particularly important when your income is not that high.
Yes,
so
exactly.
Someone who has massive income like Rudy, massive amount of dollar cash flow through his Patreon, for example, and through his different businesses, or even more so like a really big content creator like a Logan Paul or a Steve Aoki, it becomes they don't need to make as much of their money through investments. When you are making very little, each dollar that you are saving right now or putting in sort of the best investment becomes more and more crucial, because your earning potential comes from investing. It comes from time in good things that grow.
Yeah.
It doesn't come from it's not going to come from your job. Right now, your hours worked is making you so much less than Steve Aoki's hours worked. And so if you're going to close that gap, you need to be,
you have to take advantage of compound.
You need to be a much better investor. Yeah. And take advantage of the compound. And it can certainly happen in Pokemon. And there are people who have made fortunes, and I think will continue to do that. But it's through a lot of hard work, knowledge, grind, and being smart.
And like a business acumen, right?
Yeah.
Because it really becomes, it's kind of the same thing in a lot of these, like the areas where everyone wants to get rich quick. There's big winners and big losers, but the consistent winners are the people who are taking a cut of every transaction, or the facilitators, or the ones who are, okay with taking a 7% margin, but doing it over and over and over and over again. Like, that's why middlemen are going to be some of the most successful people in this hobby, consigners, like the grading companies, you name it. It's the same reason like a Coinbase in like the crypto world is like the biggest winner, because they just take a cut of every transaction.
I mean, I have probably been, right, I've been like a very successful investor, collector, whatever in this space, okay? Have made very large returns on the amount of money that I like initially put in the space. And yet I've made much less than PSA, than the company PSA or the Pokemon company has made. Right. And they took zero gamble. Right. So I had risk and gamble, and it could have gone down and I could have lost everything. When you run a business that takes a percentage, or like eBay or these types of things, or your pack breakers out there, your pack breakers are getting cash and getting money. Now they might be reinvesting it and putting it back into cards, which is a certain gamble or risk that it may or may not sell. But you're the one who's taking the risk by opening that pack and taking the loss. So people, now there's nothing wrong with starting a business that is has that type of safe kind of cash flow and cash return. It's actually smart, but it's important for people to understand this. So you realize, like, I'm trying to be, why are all these Pokemon people so rich and I'm so poor? It's like, well, it's probably because they have some sort of pack opening or streaming business or content business, or they've been doing this a really long time, and got very lucky and fortunate and had really good timing, and or just worked really hard and flipped for many years, like a TCA Gaming, go Rusty. So
yeah, that this weekend, it was awesome.
That's why I think that a lot of people, at least my opinion, that I think they see it as being that they can invest, is because they see other people making a lot of money doing it, and maybe they have a little bit of experience themselves. Maybe they bought in a few years ago and they were able to flip a card in a couple months for double, triple the price, or within a year was able to take I bought my first edition Gym Challenge box in 2018 for like 3,600, I think, about $4,000 in eBay fees. Year and a half later, sold it for 15. Like, some people can be like, oh, why would you not put your money into this? This is obviously investing. And when you look at it in the lens through, investing being you buy something and then you hope to sell it later down the line for more money, like, sure, but like, anything is investable in that regards. But the thing that I guess grinds my gears about watching some of these investing channels is they talk about investing in so much modern stuff, or they'll talk about investing in a certain thing, and they don't bring up the points of how long is it going to take for you to sell that item, and how much money you're going to make by selling that item. Because just because people say buy this, it's going to go up. Well, by how much? You know what I mean? How long am I going to have to wait for that? They're not talking about giving examples of why a set or a certain card or item is showing fundamentals, showing scarcity, rarity, popularity, talking about these things. Like, there's a reason why guys like SM Pratt or TCA Gaming aren't saying invest now and have all these items carrying it with the photo and, saying to do these things. Like, they're not saying buy this fish. They're teaching you how to fish. They're teaching you about stream fishing versus deep sea fishing. They're teaching you about the different rods to use. They're teaching you about how to change a reel. They're teaching you about like how to think about Pokemon, like how to think about buying, like, which has helped me immensely. Like, I'm so happy that SM Pratt is the guy that is constantly going on is Patreon saying, go buy this right now. This is a hot stock. This is a hot item. Go buy it, guys. It's going to go up, because there's channels that I come across that do that stuff. And it really blows me away. So I do think that a lot of people think of as Pokemon as investable because they see other people doing it. And also it's really fun, so it's like the stock market to me isn't as exciting as Pokemon. And if I can make money doing Pokemon, and I can call it investing, that makes me feel mature, makes me feel like an adult, makes me feel like, oh, I can do something that I love and make money. Like that feels really good inside, you know. So I think that a lot of people, and maybe not, maybe it's just myself, might think of like Pokemon as investing, like kind of because of those reasons.
Mm-hmm. Another way to look at it is that if you spend money on a movie ticket that's fun and enjoyable, you lose 100% of the financial value of that. If you spend money on a card, which is maybe brings that same sort of enjoyment theoretically or whatever, even if that card goes down 50% in value, you still have 50% of your value instead of zero that you would have paid on that movie. So I think that there's also, there is something to be said, particularly when this is also like, hobbies are expensive, you know, lots, and some hobbies are extraordinarily expensive. And this one can be a very, very expensive hobby, depending on what your budget is and what you're doing. Very, very expensive hobby. Can also be a not so expensive hobby if you have self-control and, you know, put yourself on a really strict budget. But the hope is that, unlike skiing in the Swiss Alps, and I fly there, you know, 5 times a year, and that's my hobby, and I lose financially lose everything, and I spend $20,000 doing that, and I have nothing, you know, other than great experiences, and it's freaking awesome. But this, you have something that has resale value, that's going to have value to other people, and thus you can resell it because they're trying to do the same thing. They want those cards too and are willing to purchase them also. So
yeah, like there's something to be said for recouping some value, right?
Yeah.
Down the road. Like I can resonate with that, because it's like, how do you measure utility, right? Like, how do you measure enjoyment? And then, you know, obviously with this hobby, like the opportunities and relationship it affords you, right? Like sometimes that comes like through having done a transaction. Like it's very hard to measure like what you've gotten out of an item you bought. Like a lot of time, like the item might go to zero, but the enjoyment you got, like, I mean, buy a booster box and open it and there's nothing in it, right? Like, but the enjoyment you got out of it, maybe you did it with friends, like those memories, like it's something that's really hard. It's like those intangibles that make the hobby, like collectibles, so difficult to, I guess, like understand and model and like, you know, analyze, because there's so many of those intangibles.
And like Jess said, I saw a post from her on Instagram the other day that said your impulse buys are not investing strategies or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, like the enjoyment that I get out of like buying a card just because I like it and it's awesome does not mean that that's a solid investing strategy. You know, it may bring me a ton of fun, but that's not something that I should be counting on, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I worry about people a lot, but I hope that they continue to find, you know, channels like yours, Jake, and others that, again, help them shift that mindset and, you know, think a little bit more logically about what they're doing. Because we want people to stay, right? We want people to be for a long time.
Yeah.
That's how we get to enjoy the hobby, like for the rest of our lives, is by people coming and staying.
I think things are largely, you know, better now and are safer now than they were 6, 8, whatever months ago. I was actually having like sleepless nights, some nights, worried about other people, and what just to me was like a complete, and to be completely honest with you guys, I thought basically every content creator had lost their mind, including our best content, you know, or the people who've been here the longest and I looked up to. I thought they all lost their minds too, and were making videos saying and telling me things like it's going to go up another 50%, 100%, and giving that sort of advice to people. And I think almost every single person got caught up in the mania, including, you know, the people that we would deem as that's where I got really frustrated. I actually felt very like disappointed and let down by the people who should have known better, in my opinion, and also had the most to gain from it going up. So I don't know. That's a whole nother thing. But at this point, I'm not worried. And these channels going out there telling people to buy like the Charizard, Hidden Fates GX tin Charizard PSA 10 for $50. Yeah, it's stupid. It doesn't give them real reasons why. It just says it's a Charizard and it's only $50. It's the second or third most, I think, Pokemon card already graded right now. And it's a bullet. It's like everyone, so many get 10s and, et cetera. Same with the Champion's Path, these types of things, but at least that's a really good looking card. And the Champion's Path booster, ETB is actually going up in value. So there's some, but they don't actually explain any of that. Right. And so that's kind of what we're talking about is there is no analysis.
Yes.
There's just, these are the top 5 cards you should buy. And then someone says, "Oh, I bought that." And then the person who's running the channel responds, "Yeah, man, you go."
Yeah.
It's like, obviously for us, it's like, what is that?
Yeah.
Who are these people? Right. From another perspective, it's like they're probably just a lot more casual and just don't care that much. Yeah. And rather than us being like anxious and worried, like this person's putting thousands of dollars, it's probably not that way. It's probably the vast majority. They just want someone to tell them that they view as an expert or something, to tell them that what they're doing is smart. And the card that they have is really valuable and it's going to go up. And that makes them feel good. And it makes them not have buyer's remorse. And the reality is the majority of people in the hobby have never seen my channel. The vast, vast, vast majority of people never seen my channel, never seen any of our channels. And they've just never come across even the concept or the idea of analyzing the value of a Pokemon card. Like, it's, and even thinking about supply and demand. And yeah, those channels are not, introducing them to those concepts. But the reality is they're very successful with those videos because there's a large portion of people who find it soothing, I think, and if you watch these videos, they're basically all the same and they say the same 5 cards and give the same type of advice. And then every couple months they make the same video again. I also don't know how the content creator can stand making those videos. That's a whole nother thing of just like how boring, and they do editing and all sort and it's all it is just kind of soothing people. And, but it's nothing to be like, I don't personally think to like worry about at this point. I think that they're at this point fairly harmless.
Yeah. I think it's much more important for like, it's kind of to your point earlier. And the same thing happens in every kind of market, during a hype period or a bubble up. Like I remember like I had in my desk at work, I had this issue of Barron's that said like, will the bull ever end? Like as it was like tongue in cheek because then it was, Christmas Eve of 2018 and the market was falling out. And like, it was just like this like reminder that like, this happens every time, right? Like, and that's like the point where you hope, to your point, like the biggest voices in the hobby can maintain some sense of rationality, but it's like we're human. Like it's very difficult for us to do that. And if we did, like the world would be very different because less of these things would happen because people would all be thinking more rationally, right? But that's just like not how we operate. So I do think that's fair. I think that, people are still out there shilling their wares, but they're fewer and, further between. And there's less momentum towards a bubble now, right? To your earlier points, bringing it back to the market, there's been, pretty much everything in vintage is, basically cut in half, right? And from the peak, maybe more. And now there's more of a stabilization. And that, I think like I'm still surprised a little bit at some of the decisions people make, but to your point, like people are just more casual, right? Or it's the argument of like the dad who's going to buy something for his kid for Christmas. He doesn't care if it's $75 at the store or a scalper's selling it for $150. He's going to pay $150 and get it for his kid.
Yeah, and he'd probably rather pay $75, but he's not going to know. Like he's not going to know that, and nor should he, and nor is it worth the effort. Oh, I'm going to go listen to this guy Jake from Pokenomics talk for 3 hours about something I have no interest in. so I can like learn the fundamentals of Pokemon cards, so I can like maybe buy a better present for my kid. It's absolute nonsense, right?
Like we're kind of insane. Like we are actually a little bit insane with what we're doing, but like we hope that like
passionate, man. Hey,
yeah,
passionate.
Like the community makes it worth it. Like at the end of the day, like freaking there's 40 whatever people in here chatting it up, asking like that's what makes it worth it. Like we got our own little bubble of, you know, crazy passionate people.
I think it's I mean, I think it's obviously it's really super enjoyable, and I think it's the important point, and then it's just to understand it's the self-awareness piece of like when we're trying to like, why are people doing these things? They're acting irrationally and crazy. There are reasonable answers to these things. You're not the dumb one who doesn't know what they're doing. It's the person who doesn't have research or in-depth knowledge. I think what was scary was the amount of people spending $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 who'd been in the hobby 2 months and then coming on my channel and yelling at me like I didn't know what I was talking about. Like that, like the level of nonsense involved in that when I've followed every day of the market for 4 straight years and you've been here for 2 months, just coming to someone like that and having that sort of attitude shows the humongous ego and the complete sort of lack of sophistication. And that in and of itself was what was worrying me. It was the psychology. And what I've always said is these things can be whatever price the supply and the demand equals out to. But if you have a large group of people who are buying things with the feeling and understanding that it can only go up, it is overpriced because that they're buying a fantasy. That is not the item that they're buying. Now, the reverse is true too. And this is the best possible lesson for everyone watching about investing. The reverse can happen too, where people have all of this irrational pessimism and negativity. 2 months ago, I made a couple videos like, now's a good time to buy. This is the most negativity, the most irrational negativity I've seen in 2 years, right? And it turns out, looks like that was the best month to buy. Now, could we have in months where there's even more irrational negativity and pessimism? Part of me hopes so, because then I'll have even better buying opportunities, right? And that's the sign of a value investor, is someone who embraces or looks for those times to accumulate and buy. Now, they can be anxiety producing and painful because you do worry. It's like, where's the bottom here? And did I get this wrong? And do people not, am I alone? I'm the only one who likes this stuff anymore. These types of things. But generally speaking, the advice for people, the mental advice is if you own something and it goes up, you should want to sell it more. If it goes down, you should want to sell it less and buy more of it. And the reality is that the vast majority of us do the opposite instinctually. When it goes up, it's like, people want this. No, it's valuable, and that means I'm not going to go. And then when nobody wants it, you're like, oh my God, please someone take this for way less. Like, get this thing away from me. And the question is, has the value, has the fundamentals of this item shifted?
Right.
That's what you need to focus on. So when a market collapses, whether it's a stock market or Pokemon cards or anything, you want to ask, okay, has this market fundamentally shifted in some sort of permanent way, or is this a short-term thing? And are we seeing a correction from a high, and right now is where it should be right now? Or have we seen an overcorrection and are we too low? Whether it's a stock or anything, when we see an overcorrection on a stock, I try to buy and add to my position. When we see an overcorrection on a Pokemon card, I'm going to try and add and buy into my position. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You just rinse and repeat. But the only way to really do that, I think, or to give yourself the best chance of predicting that or taking really good educated guesses, is being extremely educated on the price history, on the knowledge, on what people like, on what people don't like, on where the hobby is, on what the Pokemon company is doing. Are people liking the video games? Is it bringing more people in? Like, are people liking TCGs in general? What's happening in sports cards? What's happening in Magic? And you can become more. There's so much knowledge, and you never get there. You can always like learn more and be aware of more data to inform your decision making.
Yeah. People forget, like, in every transaction, there's a winner and a loser. And like, if it was so easy, everyone would be just winning all the time. But it takes it doesn't matter what it can be anything. It can be your job, it can be relationships, it can be buying Pokemon cards, it can be investing. Like having a deep level of knowledge and like critical thinking and thought to back the decisions you're making is how you produce the best outcomes over time. And I think that's that was like the hardest thing about the social media stuff through the hype, was that it was feeding into people's thought process that, oh, it's so easy, I can just do it too.
Right.
When really it's like, it's not that easy. Like if it was that easy, everyone would be doing it, right? Like it's a lot. Very, very few things in life that are worth doing come without a level of difficulty and sacrifice and like work, you know, and that's what makes them worthwhile, right? It's far more enjoyable to, you know, I think you guys can resonate this, pour yourself into something and yield the results out of it, than shoot from the hip on a whim and 9 times out of 10 lose and 1 time you win. But it's like, it's not as fulfilling, you know?
It's a tough thing to do emotionally and psychologically, to buy during low periods, to trust your own analysis of things, and to sell during high periods when everyone else is telling you it's going to keep going up. It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, it's a gut check.
Yeah.
Again, it's why there's very few very successful investors in the world. And I came from a shop that, you know, we were we had a very strong value tilt. So that's how we thought about the world. And in that, you don't always participate in all of the upside, right?
Oh,
you don't participate in the momentum plays. You don't participate in as much of the hype. You always participate. But what people forget is like, if you're doing it in a fairly rational, educated way, it protects you on the downside, which isn't necessarily the way that you make the most money, but it's a way that over time you end up, your batting average ends up being way higher because you're protecting yourself on the downside and you're having the ability. You know, I think people fail to remember that a lot of times the reason that they can't act when the market's going down is not just out of fear, but it's out of the fact that they don't have any liquidity and they haven't protected themselves, right? So, and again, that goes back to the whole like financial literacy kind of 101 stuff, that, you know, you can be so much more successful as a collector if you have like established really great personal finance habits, because the habits you build in one area can be applied in many areas of your life. And I'm a firm believer in that. And people don't always, they don't always think about it that way. Right. I think we think very, you know, siloed a lot of the time. Chat's hanging out. Got 45 people in here. I appreciate you all. Let's say guys, because it probably is all dudes, but if there's anyone else in there, y'all.
Yeah. I think it's cool that, you know, definitely a great style of conversation. You know, some people might enjoy it, some people might not. For those that are in here hanging out, you know, I mean, sure, you get time with Jake on his channel, but you guys have any questions for any of us, you know, Jake in particular, or whatever, you know, I'm happy to kind of engage here. I always like implementing the chat into these lives. They're real fun.
Yeah, it's a lot easier for us to keep up with our chat than yours, Jake. I don't even know how you do that, man. It's crazy. Because what I was saying to Rob before is that it's cool because, like, you know, it's not like you got 100,000 freaking subscribers, right? But you have the percentage of your subscribers that are wholly engaged is pretty wild. Like, I don't know if there's any analytics on that, but it's insane. It's really cool. It's really cool.
Yeah.
It makes it fun, right? I'm sure having that kind of community and knowing people by name every time, it's really cool.
It does, yeah. It's definitely it's a niche channel. It's a niche group or people who really want that type of thing. But yeah, it's my goal is to like create really good, as good as possible for that group of people. So yeah, and we hope it grows over time. And but I would be very happy just with consistent kind of slow growth. That's exactly, if I could pick anything, that's exactly what I would want. So
yeah,
absolutely.
To have an engaged smaller group than a bunch of non-participants, at least from my perspective, because I'm not really using this as like a money-making goal, other than like, just buying and selling to fund my collection, right? But it's like, I'd love to get there. I'd love to, maybe be able to put that focus in, but like, it's just a priorities thing for me, so
listen, I mean, my goal is to hopefully grow. Like, I would love to grow Pokenomics big enough where I can have you guys, like, I can pay tons of content creators and different things from the space to come on and give talks once in a while, or give ideas, or give concepts. And the idea is, if we had 5,000, 10,000 people who were interested in that sort of thing across the entire world, that would be plenty to and again, none of us are going to get rich, but it's more of a situation of like, it can really provide incentive for people to get rewarded for their knowledge and what they're giving to the community. And the idea is to get enough people so that the cost for people engaged is very low. $5, $10, whatever it is, $15, $20, $50, depending on the tier or whatever. But
and making it, worth your time, for example, as a content creator. Because I'm sure, like, how many hours a week do you think, maybe it's a dumb question, but just curious, like, whether it's not necessarily looking for like cards you want to buy, for example, right? But because I tell people this a lot, right? Like, looking for cards you want to buy is very different than just like studying what's going on in the hobby and in the market. So how, between that and content for the channel, how many hours a week are you putting into the channel, do you think, at this point?
I mean, it's hard to separate like what I would just do myself.
Right.
It's something like my dad, who's a financial advisor, told me, it's like he became a financial advisor for other people. He was already doing his own stuff. So it's like, how much more am I now doing because I'm doing it for other people? And the answer is more, for sure. But I don't know how much more. I'm sure at least 10 extra hours a week, I would think, stuff that I probably wouldn't do. And it's also the mental, emotional weight, the seriousness of like making sure that I'm providing value, and then I want to make it better and better and better and better. That wouldn't exist if I like was just hanging out and a collector.
Totally.
So yeah, but I enjoy that. I enjoy the challenge, and I like more than just investing and collecting. I also like building groups of people and communities and creating businesses. So there's a lot of enjoyment in that. And I think it's cool. I think it's cool also to model it for other people. It's like, let's see what Jake did, what worked, what didn't work. Just like what SM Pratt, right? Like SM Pratt doing a Patreon inspired me to do a Patreon in some ways. And there's a bunch of things I do very differently than Scott, that I wanted it to be different, or had my own ideas of, and other people they're going to be people in my Patreon right now who are going to start their own Patreons and start their own things eventually, or their own, content creation. And I think that's fantastic. So hopefully there'll be a big enough community where a number of people can do it successfully and sustainably. What you don't want to do is be too small where you're draining your followers of cash, or you're draining, you don't want to becoming rich while all of your followers become poor.
Right.
Let me put it that way. You want a situation where it's like, this is a humongous amount of value and information for a very affordable price, and I'm making way more than that off this information, and or at least getting way more entertainment or enjoyment or hobby or community or whatever. So that's all the thought that goes into that. But yeah, as far as the other part is that I did in a year, just over a year, without anything else. and in that year of just literally spilling all of the stuff that I've worked incredibly hard to learn and that I made millions, million plus off of, so I knew it worked. I knew it was real to some extent. There's also luck and timing involved in all of that. But I've also been very successful in the stock market, and my father's very successful in the stock market, and he taught me a lot of what I know and teach and think. So I have some reason to believe that, that I, and not to mention that what I say is very in line with people who are far more successful and have very, longer lifelong track records, people like Warren Buffett, so because I also felt like there came a time where it was like, okay, I really put in my time here and I've done a lot for the community for free, basically grinding away. Now seems like a good time to start gradually adding this. But yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. Like, I mean, that's like totally rational, and anyone who pushes back on that, I think, is off base. It's a lot. It's even for like just me to be like, all right, yeah, I'd analyze a couple pop reports this weekend, but let me pull 50 of them and go through all of them and see what the interesting tidbits are. Like, I think people underestimate, back to our earlier, kind of points, like how much time it takes to really be consistently educated on what's happening in the hobby. And I know you dabble in a lot of other, TCGs and collectibles personally, right? And I'm sure you're tracking and following all those markets as well, which is not to mention the traditional markets.
And I think I have pretty specialized knowledge, in these areas. In fact, I know I have extremely specialized knowledge that a certain percentage, of course, of our channels are going to be following, but but our channels and the people who are doing these things are in the top 1% already. Pretty much every single person, engaged in this sort of stuff. Yeah. So it's yeah.
Well, and that's why, like, the barrier to entry to do something like a Patreon is so low. But the folks who are in yours who want to consider making their own, like, they're far better equipped. Like, they are in that top percentage, many of them, because of how engaged they are and how much knowledge they've soaked up from you and others, or have put themselves in the same, or just been in the hobby for forever, basically. Yeah. Right. Some of them never left, right? Like many of us did. And that puts them in a very unique situation to provide a lot of value for people. Because there is always another stone to unturn in this hobby, whether it's just like facts, or it's, facts meaning like, where did this random Japanese promo come from? Like I'll talk about things with people and they're like, I've never even seen that card, like, which is, and I'm a nobody. I'm sure you have way more of those. I've seen ones of yours. I'm like, I've never even seen that card, but it's also too, just like following what's happening in the hobby and like knowing that long duration price history is like super valuable to others. And if you can share that, it just makes it's like, what do we have to lose by sharing as much knowledge as we have, right? Like, the hobby benefits overall over the long term. We still have the, it's not like we have to tell everything or the individual things we're buying. Like, I keep things close to the vest the same way you do, the same way Rob does. Like, we don't just blast it out there. But sharing the tactics, the skills that got us there is what's, really valuable for people, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a balance to it all. And I certainly do not focus on the business for a lot of what I do. So, for example, if I raised my Patreon rates, it would keep patrons in, because the people who got in at the lower rates wouldn't want to leave. And it would make me seem better, because now I'm raising it. Oh, it must be popular. And generally things that are expensive, people see as more valuable and just assume higher value. Right. So there are all sorts of there are all sorts of psychological games and things that people can do. There's also things like, I could stop doing my lives and I could only do my lives. I think part of it is because I give away so much for free and Dan gives away so much for free. Is there enough reason for people to pay the extra amount, or do they feel like they're getting enough of our opinions, enough of the content already? They couldn't possibly watch anymore. You know, we already put enough out there. You know, so for me, for example, not doing any of that anymore, or just doing those very short videos, but that's not what I enjoy doing. I want to talk and engage, but there's a balance there because I also I want people to be paying me because I add value, not just because they're thanking me and not just because they like me or they like what I've done. And I really appreciate people who do that. And of course I do that for people too. You know, when someone, and I think that there's something very nice about that, but from as a businessman or from a business perspective, you don't want to create a business model where you're basically relying on charity to fund your business, where you're relying on people to like you or to do that personally. You want to create a model.
Right. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, probably not. You know, probably not.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but there are all sorts of, people out there and content creators and all sorts of things where I'm just like, it's basically just a crazy parasocial relationship where people are just paying them absurd amounts of money for their like physical items or just nonsense that has no value to them other than the fact that it like makes them feel close to them. You know, there's all sorts of weird, and I want people who are engaged as much as I possibly can to feel wealthier, whether that's they've made more money, they've had more knowledge, whatever. And my real hope is that we never have to raise the price and that it just continues to grow. And then I'm able, starting this month, we're going to be bringing on hopefully people from the community and starting to pay them to give presentations. But it's the first time, other than Scott Pratt, no one's really done this before to my knowledge. So it's the first time I think anyone's trying something like this, and we'll see how it goes. If it's not sustainable, if it doesn't make sense, then I will stop it, at some point. So
it's really cool.
Yeah.
And you got a great partner with Dan. He lives not far. He's like an hour from me. I engage with him, pretty regularly. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
I hope to meet him in person. So that's really cool. Yeah, you've built a very unique platform in the space because people are just craving it, right? People crave community, especially now more than ever, but always have, right? People want to feel like they're known and loved. And if they can find a space where they're like super welcome, it's adding like value to them, like mentally and emotionally and, perhaps monetarily, like that, it's the perfect storm, especially for people in this hobby. Because a lot of us have, we're collectors because we have weird tendencies, right? And that plays out in a lot of ways for us, right? So all of us have our things, I suppose. So it's very unique. It's very cool.
Yeah. I think we're lucky to have hobby that we enjoy. And I think that a lot of people struggle to find things that they enjoy and hobbies that they enjoy. So I think if you're here and you're loving this, it's awesome, right? That's a thing to be celebrated. And then it's just about how do I like make it sustainable and not drive my spouse too crazy or become addicted and put myself, into debt or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny. How's Rafi doing, by the way? Someone was mentioning him in the chat. We haven't seen him on the channel in a long time.
He's good. So where I'm moving is going to be really close to him. So hopefully we will, I think we probably will we're certainly going to be seeing each other more. And I think that'll probably equal like doing some videos again, together. So, and going to be setting up a little bit more of a card room. Maybe we'll see, do some openings. And Nick Old School lives pretty near here, so maybe we'll meet up. And anyone's in the Boston area, greater Boston area.
Yeah, definitely a big goal for me to go to more events and see more people in real life this year. It's a top of my list for my collecting goals for this year. So because we've built these really cool communities, right? And it's about darn time we were able to see each other in person and hang out and, really engage. So, because there's a lot of good people here. So,
yeah, this is definitely one of my goals, is to, connect with more people in the hobby, not necessarily just, I always want to connect with more people. It's always fun, but content creators, and just, we're a small group of people, that share this passion, for these cards. And obviously it's very important to a lot of us, or else we wouldn't be here. It's something more beyond money, so it's always fun connecting with guys like that, just to have like that relatability, to really understand, hey, I'm a content creator, you're a content creator, big or small, we're still out here putting ourselves, we're vulnerable, we're taking chances, putting in our time, like you said,
Sure.
trying to do these things that that my spouse still stays with me. Like, dude, my girlfriend's just sitting downstairs hanging out. She was gone for like a week, and I feel terrible, but at the same time, like, she knows I'm up here doing what I love. Like, she knows I'm up here like having fun. It's not me like, oh, I'm trying to build this empire and make all this money. Like, I'm genuinely enjoying just having an honest conversation with Con, who's a good buddy and someone who I've never met before, but I look up to. Like, that's so cool that there's a platform that I get to do that. And it's just rad, man, that, like that there's so many people out there that are like us, and it's definitely it's my biggest goal this year, is to just connect with more people, dude. So thank you so much, man, for joining. Just an absolute blast. It was awesome. I know it's quite a lot of the time, but you guys are a little bit more proficient in regards to, kind of these type of financial conversations. I don't have as much experience in this topic, I guess, as you can say, as you guys, but it was super fun.
Oh, that's super good. Yeah, maybe if anyone has maybe a couple, one or two questions here at the end, I want to be respectful of your time, Jake. But I know
I'm all good. I'm having fun, but yeah, I'm happy to end when you guys want to end. Happy to go for longer.
Cool. Let's guys, when Jake goes live and has a bajillion people in his chat, your question usually gets missed. So if you've got some burning questions, would love to answer anything you want us to discuss. Jake, I'd love to know. I would love to ask you how you think and this is a very switching gears back to really technical stuff in the hobby, but how you think, if ever, the CGC pop reports coming out will affect the overall market, but also CGC's product.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So, a couple of things go through my head. Is going to be the grading scale is going to be interesting. Like, for the first thing, how many 10s, how many 9.5s, 9s, like that's going to be where I go first.
Mm-hmm.
Just really interested what they're giving out, what they're giving out on modern, what they're giving out on vintage, what that's sort of looking like. The second, obviously, big thing is just going to be the amount of cards graded. The amount of each card will be fascinating. It's obviously going to be huge. I do wonder how many collectors were grading with CGC versus the flippers, resellers. I feel like a lot of people graded with CGC who are resellers and graded sort of massive modern lots. I still believe, for a large part, that most people, and most collectors in particular, prefer PSA, and the people who were looking at CGC were more of the people looking for deals and understanding, like, or needed an option to grade a card to flip it and didn't have the patience to kind of like wait for PSA.
Yeah, I think I'm a special snowflake. I'm different. I'm one of the few who's doing it for myself.
Yeah, I think there's certainly going to be a significant portion of people who prefer CGC, maybe even prefer it now, like you, or will prefer it over time. But I think most people, tend to like to collect what they already have, what they're already comfortable with, and like to have a uniform sort of collection, or fairly uniform. Particularly if they're trying to complete sets that they've already started, maybe not wanting like mixed cards from different grading companies. I know for me, there were sets that I didn't make much progress on that I'm going to collect all on CGC now and switch because there are some better deals, but there are other things that I really want my full like PSA 10 set. I know Dan is actually selling off his PSA cards and keeping a lot of his CGC cards as part of his personal collection because the CGC cards are just as, high quality to his eye. And then the CGC 9s or 8.5s or whatever are selling for much cheaper. And so he can buy those cheaply and then sell his PSA 9s for somewhat of a premium over that. He's also buying a lot of CGC to potentially crack. So am I.
Right.
So I don't know how all of that will play out. I do think that the numbers of the modern, there's going to be and vintage too, commons and uncommons, first edition, unlimited holos, and first edition holos of like middle grade, up to probably 8s and 9s. There's going to be massive amounts of all of that. And then it's going to be it's going to take a while for it to be absorbed.
Do you think CGC is fearful of putting it out there because they think it'll devalue their product for a variety of reasons, right? Whether it's the hardness of grading.
I don't think so. I think I talk to like a lot of CGC collectors that grade with them, and I ask them because I say, I honestly don't understand the point of grading with CGC, because even if you're able to grade it at a lower cost, the resale value is just so low. Like a lot of times it's almost like, less than the point of like grading it. Like to me, like I'd much rather wait for PSA to kind of reopen up, and who knows how long and at what cost it's going to be. But to me, it's just too big of a risk for CGC to do that. You'd have to be grading hundreds and hundreds of cards, in my opinion, in order for it to like make sense. But I know a lot of guys that just personally love that chase, like that really, really just want to go after that perfect 10. A lot of guys that do the same thing with Beckett. They're just chasing those pristine 10s, the black labels. So I don't know, man. I think that if anything, that the Pop Report might help bump up CGC in a way, because I got that, perfect 10 Shining Celebi, and I threw it up on my IG for a price that I thought was pretty dang affordable. And I think that if you could say, oh, Pop 1, or Pop 2, that it might be more alluring, that people might find that more attractive. So I think that, if they throw a Pop Report out, especially for the 10s, because I just don't see a lot of them, especially for the perfect 10s, I don't see a lot of, I think that might add some value.
Yeah, I think also even for the 9.5s and the 9s, possibly, particularly if they're a lot 8.5s.
The dispersion is going to really tell you, right?
Sorry?
The dispersion is really going to tell you, right? Like,
exactly. Like if we see like mostly 8.5s for certain items. Now, of course, you're going to have modern items that are more bulletproofy that are probably going to be mostly 9s, 9.5s, I would imagine, with a few 10s. Yeah. But
that's what worries me. Not worries me, I guess, but makes me think that other side, right? Because if the majority of, if you're getting the bulk of, your 7 to 10 range, if most of it's like 8.5 or even the top half of it, like if there's a ton of 8.5s through any given pop, that could deter people, right? Because people like that round grade. They think it's going to be unobtainable for them to get a 9. I like it because I just think that, I don't know, I like it for a lot of reasons, but I think that it's all relative, right? So it's just like me, like I like the challenge a little bit, right? Of thinking they're a little harsher and me trying to go for that, but I like the aesthetic of it. We don't have to go every reason I like CGC, mostly because I was a Beckett guy. So I like Beckett. I like CGC. I was never really because like sports cards where I was, it was like we would just go to like David Adams and Beckett would be there, right? And like that's just like kind of how I grew up. So it resonates with me a little bit. But yeah, that's what I think part of them holds them back, or at least the upper executives there, because if everyone says, hey, all these cards are getting 8.5s, like 9 and above is super unobtainable, that can make it unappealing for the average collector, but also for those resellers, right? Because they're like, hey, if I can just wait for CGC or PSA to someday get back to whatever, or something mildly affordable in bulk.
Yeah.
And I know I can hit 9s consistently instead of 8.5s and make a better margin. Like it's, from the big, if grading stays the way it is, or even just kind of sustains in popularity and the graded card market stays the same, people who are grading to resell are gonna vie away from CGC a little bit, unfortunately, I think.
Sure.
We've seen it start to happen a little bit, but I like the product.
I think it's already happened for the resellers, for a lot of the resellers. For the people who really are grading lots, they're already seeing lots of cards that, would have had a good chance at 10s getting the 9.5s or the 9s. Lots of cards that were probably 9s getting 8.5s. And just not only are the 9s selling less than the PSA 9s, but now you've got a CGC 8.5 or you got a CGC 9 that would have potentially been a 10.
Yeah.
And that modern Charizard, which would have
sold
for 60, is now selling for 12 or 13 or 14 or 15. And it's like, ugh, so
8.5 is the hardest grade, I think, with CGC as far as like trying to sell. Just because people don't know how to value it. It takes far too much effort for the average person to buy the card, not the grade in that scenario, because they really have to like look at it. And most people still don't look.
I think that's the only big reason why people are buying 0.5 grades is to be like, okay, can I upsell this? Can I cross it over, to PSA, because I mean, that's what I'm doing with first edition base. I'm trying to go for an 8 set. And so I just pulled the trigger on a 7.5 Venusaur because I thought it had a very strong potential to cross over to the 8. The 7.5s are selling less than the PSA 7s right now. The 7.5s are selling for about 900 to 1,000. And the PSA 7s are selling for about 1,250 to like 1,500, So I don't think people really care about the 0.5 grades enough to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to pay more for that extra little 0.5 grade. Right. Unless it's very high up on the BGS side. Like I remember when BGS 9.5s were nothing. People were not caring about BGS 9.5, and now it's got a lot more weight. But I've noticed it with CGC, it's still not that big a deal right now. People still don't really care about 9.5s. They're going for very affordable.
Yeah. I thought this was an interesting question because I know that Rob has been grading packs recently, and I don't know if I've ever heard you, Jake, talk about graded packs. I've never heard your opinion or don't recall. So I'm curious what y'all's perception is of graded packs in the market.
So I tried my first submission because I've been dying to get a submission. I've been dying to get a returns. It probably is my favorite thing in the hobby is getting returns. It's so personal to take a card that you've either scoured very hard to find the right condition or that you've pulled yourself and be able to send it in and get that grade back. Like that process to me is just like, it's like so special. So I haven't really had that in a long time. It's been a long time since I've been able to, submit cards. I did have a returns. What was it like? I don't know, 6 months ago, 7 or 8 months ago from the years before, it got crazy. So I thought, what? I have I have 5 very minty packs. 3 were Japanese jungle. 1 was Call Legends out of a collection box that I had for my collection. And then the last one was one of the blisters, the Magma Aqua, that I have. I love EX era. So I decided, hey, let's just go ahead and crack one. Let's see what it would be like. I've never done it before. So I'm going to talk about in a video just the whole entire grading process and how it is to go from someone who's never done it before, how easy it is to do it, just my thoughts overall, kind of review on the process. That'd be fun. So I will do that when I get those packs back. But I think that, and I don't know how it is as of recently, but I think that the value of graded packs have gone up. I think that they have gone up a lot because of the way that they look. Before, a couple years ago, I feel like the crumpled look, how they folded the packs in half, really didn't look very appealing. You know, they talk about eye appeal at PSA a lot. You know, like if the card has a swirl, you know, it's gonna look better. People are willing to pay more, whatever it is. You know, like if it has a little bit better centering on the front, even if it's the same grade, you know, like there's that eye appeal. And so for me, I see these graded packs that finally come in a slab that actually look like something that I want. They actually look really good. And so that adds, in my opinion, to what I've seen in the current price. And I feel like it's a lot easier to get a PSA 10 on a pack than it is on a card. I feel like they're grading however they go about it. I've kind of read through it, but I've seen lots of packs that like have like obvious scratches and do not look like mint. And I'm like, how did these get PSA 10s? And then I've seen other returns from people very, very recent. So I don't know if they start grading a little harsher, that like, you know, they look pretty dang good, yet they're getting like 8s, you know? So I'm very curious to kind of see how it is. And I thought I'd just kind of give my honest review of the whole process. So we'll see. I think that there's a lot of potential on the reselling side that, you know, if you got a couple of minty packs laying around, or you crack a box and you know, sell the heavies and you take the lights and you can grade them, obviously taking into consideration that $100, you know, fee that you have to do is quite a lot. So bulking it out or whatever it is, depending on, you know, how much money you have and how much risk you can kind of take, I think that there's a lot of upside potential. You know, you take a $200 light pack from First Edition Fossil and they're selling for like $600, $700. Like that's a lot of profit margin as a reseller if you're looking to go that route. And on the other side, they look badass in a slab if you just want to go ahead and encapsulate them, authenticate them, throw them up on display. Like I love coming into my Pokemon room and just, this room is for me. It's not for you guys. I know some people think that I'm like trying to flex or whatnot. Like this is for me. This is my place of peace in here. So I love displaying my stuff. So I think that all in all, graded packs are starting to see a little bit more steam, and I've been enjoying them a lot.
How about you, Jake? What do you think of graded packs? Do you have any?
I like them. I think it's a nice way, first of all, some authentication that's hopefully legit. That's hopefully good authentication that, you know, that it isn't resealed, you know, to that sort of thing. Obviously, if you're a reseller out there, what people would do, right, is you could break open a box, you could weigh all the packs, you could sell the heavies, grade the lights. And that would be a way to kind of maximize your profit off of a box. I think that I don't know how long it takes to get your packs graded these days. I was hearing different things. Recently, I heard it's not that long now all of a sudden. You just kind of have to pay for it, and it's pretty quick. Mm-hmm. It's not an area. It's not an area that I'm going to be big into, but am I going to eventually have like a graded set of maybe each pack art? Sure. I would like that. I mean, that would be a cool thing to add. I don't know what collector who wouldn't really like that, who likes graded stuff. Mm-hmm. Now, does the grade matter much to me? No. And the grade matters to me on the card a lot more than just on the pack, because I don't really care as long as the pack looks really nice. Now, some people feel the exact same way about cards. They're like, I don't really care about the grade on the card as long as the card looks nice. And I totally get that too. For whatever reason, I guess the card is the thing that I'm after, and I want that to look. For some reason, I like the chase of getting like the perfect. It's irrational, probably, but of the card. Whereas I'm not so much. I don't really care if the pack gets some sort of feels very like arbitrary 10 versus a 9 or something like that. Now, I would probably care the difference between like maybe like a 9 and a 6 or a 7 if there was crinkles on it, or you know, if I can actually tell the difference. I'm definitely not. I don't own lots of graded packs. I'm not an expert on. I know people who do, and they tell me it seems ridiculous which ones get 10s and 9s and, you know, whatever. I don't really know. But yeah, and just having the protection. So the authentication, the protection, the displayability, that I like it. I like it with graded packs. I think for me, if I could get like a 9 set or an 8 set, even as long as it looked nice, I'd be really happy. It'd be something I'd love to display, or, you know, would be cool to display. And I think a lot of the pack arts are very nostalgic, you know, the pack arts themselves.
Yeah. I recently had that same mental shift about, especially just seeing more and more so, whether it's Z or other guys like who have graded whole boxes basically, and like
Yeah.
honestly 8, 9, 10. My experience has been they very much look the same because to your point, like with a card, there's
The
a
end
lot. What's that?
It's the end product that
Yeah,
you're
it's the end.
whereas if you have an 8-pack, the cards inside could still be 10s or whatever. You know, I don't see the 8-pack being less valuable than the 10-pack for me personally. But
I think it's because there's so much more like a regularity to packs too, right? Like especially when you get to like the way that the crimps are cut and some of them slant. Like, yes, that's kind of like centering on a card, but it's like it makes there's not as much of a standard for a pack, right? We're very with a card geometrical, like measurement, perfectly centered, like how like it seems a little more arbitrary with packs. And I love graded packs, but I
yeah,
finally broke that switch on like, oh yeah, if I can buy a 9 graded pack for like almost the same price or a little premium to a raw unweighed or a light out there, and it's in the new style slab and it's authenticated and it's a great way to display it, I don't need a 10. And it's funny because I've never been a 10 card collector. I've always been a 9 collector.
yeah,
For some reason with packs, I always wanted 10s. Which
interesting.
I don't know what it was for me, but that switch has flipped now the more I've kind of seen and experienced grading my own as well.
I think I'd probably pay 10 to 20% more for a 10 instinctually. So to be fair, I would prefer the 10s because it'd be nice to see all 10s or to have it uniform.
Yeah.
But I would not be paying, obviously PSA 10s generally go for at least double PSA 9s in cards, and then it just goes up for there depending on the card and the rarity. And I certainly would not. I personally would not be paying double. But
Oh.
but yeah, highly personable and subjective. If you're a 10 collector or you feel the same way about cards and packs, I wouldn't be like, you're probably more rational than I'm being. But it's funny. I have the same reaction to like graded video games as like I think like I just want it to look nice.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks cool in that display case. And and honestly, I don't even care if it's sealed that much. So, and let me put it this way. I would prefer it sealed. I would prefer it in a perfect grade, but not nearly as much as the market has decided it's worth. That's the best way to put it. And I feel the same way about these graded packs. It's like I put a little bit of premium, whereas for Pokemon cards, for whatever reason, I am willing to pay up on the premium for the 10s because I guess it's the thing I care the most about. I think if cards were the thing I cared the most about or video games were the things I cared most about, maybe I would pay up for the 10s because you want the best of the best and the thing you care most about rather than just buying something because you think it looks cool and will be a cool display. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's where I'm coming from. I'm not sure.
What was crazy was during the peak of the Logan Paul hype, the spread on a light first edition Team Rocket pack versus a graded 10 Team Rocket pack was it was one of the wildest things I saw in like the more kind of like common area of the market. Like it was like I mean those things were going for like $1,500, sometimes closer to 2,000 for what is, I mean, yeah, sure, you can get a non-hollow Dark Charizard, but it's a light first edition Team Rocket pack.
I know.
It's
very, very likely.
Think about the guys who were buying those boxes before that and grading them and flipping those. I mean, those were some of the craziest margins that people were making in that time was on some graded packs. Not to mention and I am an owner of ones who have graded older style slabs. Those things, like you don't even need a tool to take them apart. Like I just cracked one that I won on PWCC I got a PSA 9 for like 40% less than the market rate of what just a pack out there raw goes for. And I was like, because it's a 9, not a 10. And so then I cracked it, put it in a silver GT case because it was a folded one, and I unfolded it. And that's the other dangerous thing is people are taking like 4 certs that aren't that old, and they're resubmitting them, and they're going into the new slabs, and they're just unfolding the crimps at PSA and recasing them. So you like got to really look, because they'll still have the 4 certs, but they got the weird line on them from being folded, especially with English, because the foils are thicker. It's a very weird kind of more niche part of the hobby, but they're fun to collect. You just got to be careful and not, to your point, pay a crazy premium for those. So yeah,
it's untapped, or less tapped. Most people have heard of grading cards or have graded cards. And like myself, I've only been in the hobby for 3 years, but I've, graded cards and, I know the market for it, but, I've never graded packs, and you start seeing, like what is possible. And it's fun, it's fun. And like a lot of people like ask, like, what's next? Like, when you start to like look at the market, when you start to like look at like sold pricing, just go and like put Pokemon sold and put $500 and then put 1,000 and then put 2,000 and see what comes up every single day under those listings. And you start to see graded packs that are selling for so much, or you have filters on your save searches from eBay. You get the daily email. And so you start saving a bunch of auctions, and you just start looking at what's going on. Like, you just gain so much exposure of what is selling, what is next. And like, I just think that not a lot of people think of grading packs. It's not something that's like so big, like grading cards, like it's just mainstream, like everybody's going to do it. Plus there's a higher entry point to grading that pack. There's more risk involved. And so not as many people are grading. So it's kind of like this perfect balance of like, it's still high to grade, so people don't really want to necessarily take this risk. But if you do have the super minty packs, you are able to like really, judge it and take that risk yourself. You can make a lot of good money, just sending in stuff that you got lying around in order to fund personal collection goals. It's just less tapped. It's not as many people, not as many eyes on it, in my personal opinion, than like some of the cards may have. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, man. I like looking at stuff like that. I like letting the data talk for me instead of me trying to speculate like, oh, I think this is going to go up. This is going to go up. Like, I just like to watch. I just like to sit there and watch what's going on and listen to other people that have the experience, because I've only been here for 3 years. So all I can do is study. All I can do is be patient and just try to like understand what's going on to the best of my ability. And then slowly but surely just start to take these little risks. Like when I did my PSA submission, I have like, I don't know, 10 other packs that I could have submitted, but I'm like, I'm just going to start with 5. I'm going to take this risk. I allotted this money that I, put aside a little extra, to do this. And I said, I'm comfortable if I don't make $1 off these packs and they're just in my collection. Just like you said, Jake, hey, I'm spending money on a movie. It's just purely entertainment. This is not for resale value or anything. It's just, I'm just going to put this money aside. I just wanted to test stuff out. And that's kind of like what I've done, like through my, brief time here. It's like I start to take these small little risks. I start to venture out into to new things. I used to always hear Z&G talk about, I just specialize in first edition WotC. And that's awesome. That's great. But I just started to see so many different opportunities just by willing to put in a little bit more time, which, guys like that don't have, to sit there and look at trends and, sales data for hours and hours and hours. But it's just like really like cool to kind of see like, oh, I wasn't into Japanese gold stars. I saw that Rayquaza is a really popular one. It's the most expensive one on the English side. No one's buying these Japanese gold stars and PSA 10s. I'm going to scoop one up. It makes sense. The pop report is pretty small. It's a popular Pokemon on the English side. I'm guessing that sooner or later down the line, people are going to want the Japanese. So just putting all these factors in my head and saying, okay, I'll spend $600. And that's what I did, $600 on a Japanese PSA 10 gold star, 2.5 years ago. Like, it's just these little risks like that you can start to kind of to make. And with graded packs, this is like the thing that I've just been kind of stumbling on. It's just been fun. It's just kind of like the next thing for me. Is there anything that you're kind of seeing like that for you, Jake, that you've kind of been checking out along those lines without giving too much away that's not Patreon?
It's more just like I don't like to tell people and then have people like do exactly what I'm doing,
right,
and affect the market like that.
I get it.
But yeah, I think what's great is giving like examples like you just gave. Like it's because that you can't do that anymore, but it educates people on like, okay, this is the way I was thinking. I saw the English Gold Star Rayquaza selling for a really huge amount. I had this Japanese Gold Star, and arguably the Japanese Gold Star Rayquaza looks even better because it has the white, the border I think matches it really well. It's a subjective thing, but yeah, I looked up the pop report. It's pretty hard to get. I'm not seeing a lot of EX Deoxys, Japanese cards around. I remember Scott Pratt, I think, talking about that a long time ago as well. Yeah, I mean, I own a lot of Japanese Gold Stars for a very similar reason. Around that time, you could pick them up really cheaply. And I think talking about that's very helpful rather than I'm going to say like, right now, this is what I see.
Right.
But if people ask me direct questions about like certain areas of the market, I will answer them directly. I don't think I've ever been like, I'm not going to talk about that. But there are always opportunities.
Yeah.
There are always things when I take a look, I say, this thing's too cheap. I guess there are almost always opportunities. I didn't think there were any opportunities mostly this year. That's why I didn't buy it. I thought everything was just way, way overvalued. So I bought almost no Pokemon for 7 months outside of like maybe 3 or 4 cards. And now I'm buying 1,000+ cards a week or something, so it's, I definitely practice what I preach every single day. So, and just as you demonstrated with that Gold Rayquaza, like it's that type of thinking, that type of knowledge, that's going to be your best bet. But as you alluded to, it's not, they're all trying to predict demand is very difficult. Predicting part of the luck in that, or luck or so, was that people started really liking Japanese a lot more. And back then it was really mainly just English collectors. And now there's a lot more Japanese collectors, a lot more big channels talking about Japanese.
Yeah.
There's tons of PokeRev opening Japanese on his channel. Leonhardt, it was all English. Back in the day, people weren't seeing that. People weren't being told to collect that. And then that's really trickled all over, Japanese vintage as well. And that really helped those Gold Stars, is that there are now people who are like, I only collect Japanese. That was pretty unusual back then. So, and that you could not have predicted. Now, what you might have predicted, and this is something that I always felt that Japanese was too cheap. And when I would hear like Gary King Pokemon or people come out and say the only like English is the investable one, Japanese, and then I was able to buy like really, really cheap Japanese holos, I would do that. Now I think they're overpriced. A lot of the Japanese stuff, and I think the English is actually underpriced in large part because I do think that there's been maybe an overcorrection. Can you guys an example? So I think all this stuff is really good, and I think it's about all this stuff is really good, and I think it's mainly about knowing when to buy which or when to move from one thing, and then. And I think that more than anything can be sort of the downfall of people asking me like, what are the top 5 things to invest in at all times? It's like, well, it's all about price point. There are probably thousands of things that are fairly investable potentially. And when to buy them is all about your level of engagement and knowledge and a bit of luck.
Yeah.
a bit of luck.
And it's, it's starting to, to your point, it's a bit of a contrarian thing, right? It's like moving away from the crowd when they're moving in one direction. Like, and that has happened a lot with, like, it's hard because as a guy who loves Japanese culture and has historically largely collected Japanese cards and sealed, actually, I have had to realize that now, in where the market has come, there have been certain sets and certain cards that have been on my list that I've historically wanted in Japanese, where I am just like, the value was better in English. And like, if I, if I want to continue to pick things up, like certainly you could just wait, right? You could just wait and see what happens, right? And not do anything. But if you feel like both the fact that it's a good value for the time we're in and on a relative basis, you execute on that purchase, right? And it was weird for me to start to make that mentality shift towards English sets, to your point, where a lot of it, like I was like, man, I need to sell some of my Japanese cards, not keep buying them, right? Like other than that first PWCC auction, the October one, the monthly, that was just a train wreck for the most part. Where I was buying some Japanese, like to your point, social momentum, right? The game just changed when influencers started really talking about Japanese, opening Japanese product. It was very weird for me because I was like, no, this is my thing. Like, go away, go back to first edition, whatever. Like, but it's kind of the same way I feel about. I won't say what, but just some other parts of the hobby too. To your point of not wanting to give specific current examples, but there's other areas that have been like that, and you just kind of have to, sometimes eat your not emotions, but like the way you've always done things, right? If you want to collect in a way that's sustainable. So
it sucked for me not to be able to buy any Pokemon for all those months because I had tons of collection goals I was wanting to work on, but I didn't. And I moved to these other hobbies that luckily I have other things that I like to collect and enjoy too. And I can just not buy anything. That's always an option.
What'd you pick up in the Harry Potter realm, if you don't mind saying, or unless you're still attacking that stuff? I arguably love Harry Potter more than I love Pokemon, so I'm curious. Yeah, like I am
definitely not there. I mean, well, just loving Harry Potter over Pokemon, I probably rate them evenly in terms of cards. Definitely care way more about Pokemon.
No, not cards. Just like the attachment I have because of the formative years that those books played out in my life. But at any rate,
I'm probably with you there overall, although it's tough.
Yeah.
But as far as Harry Potter stuff, mainly just bought a bunch of the sealed product when it was like $20, $25, $30 a box.
Oh, so cheap.
So, with just the plan of like, I think it's going to go up a lot at this point. Booster box, like I think at that point, unlimited base set was like $30,000, and I was like, these Harry Potter boxes look great, and they're $30, and it's like, this is just insane. So I bought a lot of Marvel cards. I bought a lot of Harry Potter cards. I bought a lot of DBZ, a lot of the Panini and the Score stuff when it was very, very cheap before DBS went up. So it all worked out very, very well. I don't know. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Maybe all of this stuff will just plummet and I'll come back to reality. But right now it's like, it felt like I bought every thing at the right time. I even sold stock at the right time this year.
Yeah.
And rebought at the right time. But I know how risky all this stuff is. It's why I preach it so much that it's like, I do think all the effort and the work has helped me have good instincts and have good pattern recognition in these spaces. And I do think that, unlike in the stock market, I think I was one of the only people who was probably thinking this way about Pokemon.
There's a knowledge premium, I guess, or a knowledge edge you can get in things like this that you really can't for the average person in the traditional markets.
Yeah, and how many people in Pokemon had my experience and markets in general, who were into it,
Yeah.
A very low percentage probably as compared to stocks, where obviously people were investing in stocks. I mean, I'm going to be the young person with far less experience.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened to me with Bitcoin, candidly. Like, I'm still bullish on digital assets, but I've been buying Bitcoin for a long time. And, in my gut told me that above 60, when I was uncomfortable with buying it, I should be selling it. to our points earlier, right? And that's just luck, right? A lot of that's luck, but a lot of it is having spent 5 years in those markets and understanding them in tandem with traditional markets. Like it's a similar thing, right? The time you spend in an area and the knowledge you accumulate can help drive your instinctual my mother's also a financial advisor, a very kind of more well-known woman in the investment advisory world. And she, just like the way she talks about her gut and how it is like, and she's like, her batting average is pretty damn good. And a lot of that just comes from, 30 years of experience, right? Like,
and it's based on real things, right? I mean, for me, a lot of it, like, it has to do with what people are saying. So for example, I made a video saying on my channel, now is the best time to buy, probably, it's certainly the best time to buy in the last couple of years. And I had some guy just go back and forth with me, just like, he was saying that everyone's going to turn against me in the community now that I'm saying positive things about Pokemon, just like really, really negative things, and it was like, oh, my instincts are correct. Like as I was having more and more of those reactions, it was like, oh, when those types of things happen, you're probably at a bottom like that. When a lot of people are having these like really sort of like, over the top, angry, negative, anxious, concerned takes. And it's just like when a lot of people were getting angry. So, because I believe I'm talking common sense basically the entire time on my channel. So when people think I'm like an intense bear, I think, okay, we're in a huge bubble. And then when people think I'm too positive, too optimistic, these types of things, it's like, okay, that's a really probably good time to buy. And the psychology or the understanding of this is that the price where things are today, the psychology of where we're going in the future is already built in. Mm-hmm. So people aren't buying now because they think it's going to go lower. So as soon as they realize it isn't going to go any lower, they're all going to start to buy, and then we're going to go up. And then it's the same thing at the top. People aren't selling because they think it's going to go higher. So there are tons of people who want to sell right now, but they're not selling right now because they think it's going to go higher. As soon as it stops going higher, they all sell, and then it retraces. And so when you have an instinct for that, you can be more efficient with your timing. Now, I think the most important thing as a value investor, though, is just buying, and your buying top point and then holding. Yeah. Like ideally you want to be buying things that you just hold forever. So for example, the crypto.
Yeah, that was the first time I ever sold Bitcoin, and it freaked me out to get rid of it and
that's a good example, right? Of someone who, if you are feeling that way, that means it's a huge bubble probably. Or if a lot of people who have that type of evaluation, and for example, me, who I knew I was like the most bullish person I knew on Pokemon a few years ago, and now I'm the most bearish person. Whoa, what's happening here? Yeah. That psychological shift happened.
And we could be wrong. It'll happen, right? I mean, even the best investors get it wrong.
You can't time it. You can't time it, and you can be wrong in the sense that you could be a weirdo, and you are not the market. So, for example, like your instincts are just way off because most people in Pokemon don't think and feel like you. You know what I mean? And that is possible. Same thing with crypto. Same thing with whatever. More often than not, though, you're right, but timing it exactly is impossible, because anything can, when there's upward trajectory and momentum, things can just double and triple so quickly. And if you sell, you could miss the whole run.
I missed tons of upside and random stuff.
Yeah. So there's definitely the bearish trap of like, you start to feel that way and you sell very early, and then you miss the run up. And then even if it does collapse 40%, it went up 300%. And so even the 40% collapse, you've already been completely priced out of the market because it's way higher than when you sold. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that a lot of people have experienced in Pokemon and other markets, where it's like, I sold everything and then the market went up 300%. And even though it's come back 50, 60, even 70%, I can't afford things. I can't afford it anymore. And it's too painful to rebuy things now at much, much higher prices. And so I'm out. And so all of that's important too.
So true, man.
That's why I wanted to put up this comment.
It's so true.
It made sense with what we're kind of talking about. Like, you've got to have that mentality where, to your point, it's the most important thing is to be buying when the value is there, right? So yes, there's hey, the market's down to today in Pokemon, and this card is at X, but I'm still vying to get a deal on it, right? Which means under current market. But sometimes you have to zoom out to like the 30,000 foot view and see, not see the chart like this, but see the chart like this and realize where we've come and understand, like, you can't time it perfectly, but the timing now, when you look back in 5 years, is going to look pretty damn good if you've really, done your diligence and made and executed on an idea.
So, I mean, to answer this question, Basic Trainer, to tell you the truth. So right now, for me, it's time to buy things under market because there's going to be a ton of it. Now, certain things, particularly the modern stuff that I'm buying. And when we say under market, it just means that I'm buying large lots or I'm buying auctions that kind of slip below the radar. But most of like the buy it nows and most of the auctions for like the single card or whatever is selling at 100% and I'm buying it at 60%, what have you. For those who just to clarify, at the start of the pandemic, there are a bunch of YouTubers who came out and made videos saying that how is Pokemon going to fare in this? Don't fear, don't worry. I was watching the market really carefully and prices were going up. And I ended up spending about $80,000 on PSA 10, Gold Stars, Shinings, and other sorts of things. And I paid the highest prices ever right during that period. And I just bought everything. And so there was an example of where I felt like the market was going to explode. And this is going to be my last chance potentially ever to own some of these low pop items at these prices. It's how I honestly felt. And I put my money where my mouth is. And I did that versus now. I'm not doing that, right? I have a very different mindset. And so that should show you at least where I'm at in terms of where I think we're at in some sort of cycle or where I think the market is. But I'm like, I can easily get back there. And so I don't have a system where it's like, I only buy 50, 60%. It all depends on my instinct on where we're at in a market cycle and how aggressive I need to be. And right now, my instinct is I need to be consistent and I need to be able to buy for a very long time, or I need money so that I can buy at the sort of levels I'm buying at for a while. Cause I don't think it's going to dry up that quick. And now I think is probably a good time for the foreseeable future where we're going to be amassing things and sort of building our collections. Cause there's going to be lots and lots of supply coming back. I do think there's going to be a point where where we feel that supply starting to dry up, where I probably feel that. And that's when I might start paying over 100% again, if I feel like things could explode or things could move up.
Well, that's a tricky thing to navigate, right?
Yeah. And you got to trust your gut, I guess, or your instincts or your rationality or whatever. And always have backup plans and never obviously, buy what you can't, afford or leverage yourself, put yourself at risk for something like that.
Yeah, and play the time game, like be patient, because I followed the whole scarcity, rarity, popularity thing that, Scott really, promotes and has helped me a ton, but still taking in all those factors, it can still kind of bite you in the butt in regards to just like good old fashioned time and seeing market trends, seeing that we could go up so far and then come back down and seeing how it, like a few years that we can kind of ride steady growth kind of up or down. Like, so to me, like, even if I know all the fundamentals, even if I know what to look for, like if I'm not like 100% sure, like it's okay to just be patient, like the whole like Avatar, the attack Zing and defense Zing. There's also a neutral Zing, and just sitting there being patient and just like watching other people, watching content creators like to have that experience, because just because I have knowledge, like experience is just so much, man. It's just so invaluable, which is why I watch a lot of those guys, because I just don't have that.
And I think it can depend if you're doing it to make a play as an investment, or you're making a play as a collector, and what the price point is as a comparison to your net worth or your buying power. Like all those things frame like some of your ability or lack thereof to make that better, feel the need to make that better, be able to be patient, right? Like, because there are a lot of people who are collecting now who like could really afford to be patient on a lot of items right now. Again, to that point where with supply coming back and all these, the things everyone always talks about, right? Where they're still, I talk about this a little bit, like there's still guys with the lowest cost basis in the market who haven't necessarily put that supply out there or sold it yet, and they can continue to undercut, and that allows people to be more patient. But there's times where, to like Jake, with your point, like where like it's going to get away from you, right? And that's like the hardest thing to navigate. Like the hardest thing is to be patient and be wrong and let something get away with you that you really wanted. But the beautiful thing is like it's just shiny cardboard, right? It's not like not taking the shot on that deer when you're a hunter in, whatever BC, and now your family starves because you didn't take the shot, like, or whatever. Like, I don't know how to compare it, but it's like, it's not like, it's not going to ruin you forever by missing out. It's not fun, but it's not going to hurt you the same way that buying at the top could hurt you. So that's the way I look at it a little bit. I don't know. It's a little
losing all your money is much worse than being extremely wealthy is good. It's much more important to have like enough money to pay your bills and to like feed your family than it is to be like insanely wealthy. So it's not a good wager.
Right.
Yeah. It's all about downside risk for me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, man.
It's much more important that you just like can afford all of your bills than you have like the best Pokemon collection in the world. And trust me, it's going to bring you much more happiness.
So I have such a higher risk appetite in like every other area other than this. It's like a weird conundrum for me. Like the things I've done with my career, the things I've done with investing in the stock market and in other, private investments and what have you. We've talked about this because Rob and I talked about some of our biggest mistakes in the hobby. And one of mine is just like not levering in, like not, to your point, putting my money where my mouth is on some things. And but it's just, there's other ways to make money. Right. So, and I still get to have my collection and enjoy it. Just because I didn't have 7 extras to sell at the peak, isn't the worst thing.
That's investing. You could have always bought more and you could have always sold more. So it's, but I do think that understanding where you got things right, why you got it right, why you were able to go through with it, and then understanding where you got things wrong, why you got it wrong, and trying to learn from that's obviously really smart. I do think, generally speaking, buy things that you think are undervalued, because do not wait for bottoms. It's not good. It's not a good way to invest. When you personally, and I'm not telling you, if you personally look at this Pokemon market, you're like, all these things are overvalued and it's insane what people are paying, do not buy a single card. It's very simple. Like, you have to make your own judgment. I think what's difficult, right, is where you feel like, I'm new to this, or I don't have as good a judgment as someone else. Then what do you do? And I get that, because it's like you still want to buy, you still want to collect, you still want to be involved, and you're just really not sure. And then you're not an investor, and that's okay. Don't look at these. Then I would say, like, don't look at these things as investments. Just like buy what you can afford and have fun, and try to develop a better instinct over time, which I think will probably come by just being in the hobby. But as my father says, like most people just are not born investors. Like they're just not. It seems to be like they're not wired. It's not fun. It's highly stressful. It's highly unpleasant for a lot of people. You're doing the opposite of what other people are doing. You're often missing out when other people are making money. And when everything's terrible, you're still losing, but you're just not going down as much. And yet you've accumulated lots of wealth over the last 20 years, but it's been painful, I think a lot of people, they prefer just to be part of the hype. It's like, I want to collect what other people are collecting. I want to buy the alternative arts when they're the most expensive and then the most popular and they're the newest because it's the most fun for me. And it's like, all the power to you. Just understand that that's not a good investing mindset. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. There's a hard disparity between like understanding like if your risk aversion exists because of a lack of knowledge or like where it's coming from. It's the same reason, like to your point, like everyone's not, born, few people are born investors. The same reason like everyone's not an entrepreneur, right? People just don't they don't have the willingness to bet on themselves in some ways, right? It's the same kind of idea, right? It's just like varying degrees of risk.
And I think the interest, like I like it. I like the sacrifices and I like the struggle and the sacrifices and other parts that would drive someone absolutely crazy and they would hate to do. So it's not even, a lot of this is not about ability. That's the thing. It's more about interest and sort of how you're wired, I think.
Yeah. And the capacity to take some L's and just keep going. Right.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a certain, it's almost part of, it's part of the enjoyment, the sort of, it's what makes it meaningful, what makes it worthwhile, those sorts of periods dealing. I could tell you, like when I lose 40% of my portfolio in a month, in the stock market, which has happened a couple of times in my life, or over 2-3 months, there's a certain type of character, but I mean, it's like when that happens, I'm like, hell yeah, this is what this is about. If you are going to be doing this, these moments are as important and as critical as the moments where it just skyrockets, and both are scary and crazy. And you're sort of sitting there like, what is happening with people and why is everyone, and you just you hold through that, you hold through the high, you hold through the low. And over time it goes up in value. Although I'm afraid because I hate a lot of the hodlers and the diamond hands people in crypto. And I just think that they're like such scummy people because I just feel like they're manipulating people and they're actually the most terrified. And they're just trying to like convince a lot of people who have no business owning crypto and know nothing about it to continue to like hold it so that they can like become rich, and all the memes involved with that. I have to say, I hate that culture so much. And I do agree with the fundamentals of it, of like when you believe in something and you understand the value, do not be shaken by the price points. Do not be shaken by what other people are saying. I very much agree with that.
Yeah, it's a tough space. I really miss the days when people weren't talking about it. Yeah. Like I think it's going to change the world in a lot of ways. I think it's going to ruin a lot of people's lives with them buying, $1 million digital monkeys. But there's a lot of toxic culture there for sure.
Yeah, and whether or not the product is great, and whether or not the product or the thing is great is irrelevant. There was toxic stuff in the Pokemon. There were pump and dumpers going on here. You know what I mean? So like you can believe in the underlying asset or the underlying thing and still be like, this is toxic and bad for people and is manipulative, so.
Yeah, that's true. Very, very
well,
true.
I think that like I would love sometime in the future, man. I think one of the topics that I wanted to get to and you touched on, was talking about the modern market and talking about people that are buying these very high priced modern cards because they look really, really cool and they're awesome and they're new. but really, like, what does it look like down the line? Does it just get lost in the shuffle of all the other cool artworks? Is it just a high moment? I mean, like, how many people are really going to remember, the cool battle styles or Shifu or whatever it is, like these, or even like the um the Mew V Max, like down the line, is it worth buying, like, as of right now? I would love to go into that for like another time, because I have like different thoughts and would love to get your view and perspective. I know we're above that 2 hour mark. I don't know if you guys want to keep going. I'm happy to call it right now.
Why don't we like call it ish? We could take one more question or something if someone has it, but I, wouldn't be bad for me if that's cool with you guys.
Yeah, man, I feel you. So who's we're not going towards MetaZoo as much, so that's also because I would love to talk about that, just because I find it so fascinating. What an amazing case study on just so many things. But does anyone have one really last question for Jake? 2.5 hours. Really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, man.
Time is everything. Cool. So value it a lot.
No, I love talking about this. I was looking forward to it.
Heck yeah. So chat, let me know if anyone's got a question that's not about Yacht Club monkeys or MetaZoo. Maybe something good to cap it off.
And if not, we can just end too. It's all good.
That's a good one. Let's end on that. Basic asked if you're planning on going to any events. Love to know like what you're thinking about for this year, what your view is on that, and which events you like and what maybe you've been to.
I can't promise anything because I'm not sure what like the whole pandemic situation is going to be like and how my girlfriend and my family feel about various things. But if money and time work out and I can safely travel without worrying any of my family, I would be down to, I think the Charlotte one is the closest one to me. And then Swami seems to be pulling for a bunch of people to go to the Denver one.
Yes, come on. That's my plan too, Denver.
So those would be probably the two top on my list. The Charlotte, because it would be a bit easier for me to go. And then if not, maybe the Denver one.
Thought about Charlie's event in Richmond.
Yeah, so I heard, so I don't know if that's happening anymore. So I was thinking about possibly vending and actually was going to maybe set up kind of like a booth where I could like interview a bunch of people. Maybe there was some talk, or just kind of be a media person there, which would be interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I haven't really heard anything. So yeah. I saw Charlie. I didn't get to say hi to him because I only saw him from afar, but I wanted to ask him about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's going to happen, but if it does, that would be another potential one. Maybe I would go to that instead of the Collecticon Charlotte one.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe go. I think if I go to the Charlotte one, I could possibly vend. I think if I come out to Denver, I probably won't. I'll probably just hang out.
Yeah, and just be fun.
Yeah, and just enjoy myself. And maybe I'll bring some stuff for trade nights or whatever. Or, we'll see. But
maybe, bring some heavy Japanese base packs like me and, rip some heat. Oh, man. It's so fun to do stuff with other collectors in person. It is, but Rob's out west too, so we got to get him to the Denver one. That would be super fun. That works good for me too. On time, this year is just weird. I switched jobs, so I can't plan anything. Like I just don't know what's happening.
Yeah. Both my girlfriend and I too are lots of changes and shifts with moving and careers and potentially and other sorts of things. So we're sort of in the same boat. So it's hard for me to make commitments, but I definitely, I want to go. I've never really experienced this hobby too much in person. So yeah.
Awesome.
Dude, thank you so much for joining. This was absolutely huge. I probably changed my shirt like 3 times before I came on because I was like, man, I gotta look my best for Jake. I gotta be on point here. But to the chat, guys, thank you. Like truly, thank you. A lot of you guys have been here for the last 2.5 hours. So as always, such an amazing community that come on to, rock Pokemon and I, channel. We're just super blessed. So Jake, you're the man. Thank you so much. Thank you, girlfriend, for allowing us to borrow you for 2 hours.
She's trying to sleep too, so she's.
We're the worst.
We're very grateful. So yeah, thanks, man.
Jake, I'm sure you already do. If you sub to me, you sub to Jake. So, but yeah, thanks a lot, Jake. That was awesome.
Absolutely, guys. Yeah, thanks for having me. And again, I enjoy these conversations. Sometimes I'm in Discord talking with one person for hours at night. So it's sort of like, it's fun doing this. It's fun talking with people, and yeah, it's great. It's one of the things I love to do the most. So appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to do it.
Heck yeah, man. All right, chat. Be good. Deuces.
Take care, guys.